Dr. Carter? Here. Mrs. Eisenberg? Here. Mrs. Henry? Here. Mrs. Hughes? Here. Mr. Sheets?
Mr. Sheets is unable to attend.
Mr. Scotty?
Here.
Mr. Ledger? Here. Mr. Rice?
Here.
8 present.
Thank you. I will turn the recognitions over to Mr. Potter. Thank you. So this evening we have two recognitions. We have two long-time staff members of the school district. And I say that with the most hearing of respect for these individuals. Unfortunately, both of them were not able to join us this evening. The first one is Mrs. Pamela Karam. She's been most recently the elementary school librarian. She served the school district for 31 years. The other one we'd like to recognize this evening, and again isn't able to attend this evening, is Mrs. Julie Umberger. Mrs. Umberger has been a long-time elementary school principal. She was the Rockland Elementary School principal for many years, and elementary principal. I said secretary. I apologize. She was the long-time elementary secretary at Rockland Elementary School for many years, and has transitioned and been at Longtop at Mr. Hoffman Elementary School since Rockland closed. She has served the school district for 33 years. So, Ms. Kelly, I know you, unfortunately, the two ladies were not able to join us this evening, but you had some comments to share.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Potter. So, as you mentioned, their years of service, it is incredible. Ms. Karam has been a huge help in our library for many, many years. She did a wonderful job keeping our library organized and helping students each day with their book selections. We will miss her fun-loving attitude and positivity in the building as she ventures into her retirement. Although we didn't get to see her this school year, we hope to see her in her retired state of mind for visits in our future years. Patty Kate, if you're checking in online on the YouTube, we're going to miss you, your dedication to the school, and we hope to see you soon. And Mrs. Umberger, this is more of an emotional one for me. I've worked very closely with her since my transition into administration. She's been working for, like Mr. Pottinger said, 33 years as a principal secretary, and she is truly a hub of knowledge at the elementary. I'm pretty sure, and if I did my counting backwards correctly, I am her 7th principal that she has worked with. So she's worked alongside of many and helped. If previous principals operated the way that I did with her, she has probably taught them a whole lot about a role as a principal, in addition to being the right-hand man to the daily operations. She helped me tremendously during my transition to the school building, but we also developed a wonderful friendship too. She's by far one of the funniest people that I know, and I'm truly going to miss our daily conversations, and particularly our summers together. Most times the summers, it's just the two of us going through, getting ready for this school year. So Julie, I hope you have a happy, healthy, and enjoyable retirement, because you certainly deserve it if you're watching. Thank you.
Ms. Kelly, I can echo that I was one of those principals, and you're right. I think she did.
You were on the list.
Both of us more than we probably need. Thank you, Ms. Kelly, and huge congratulations to both Ms. Karam and Mrs. Umberger in their retirement. Next, we'd like to transition into the New Heights Awards. The New Heights Awards is a monthly event where we get to recognize our staff. We get a list of all the staff members that receive the New Heights Award, whether it's recognized by a student, a staff member, or a community member, and we go through those and we pick 2 employees, essentially employees of the month. And this evening, I'd like to recognize Miss Amy DeSella. So, Mr. Jinich, if you don't mind joining me, we'd like to recognize Amy if she is here this evening. We'll come down here. So, Ms. DeSella has been recognized as the New Height Award recipient. And Mr. Jinich, I'll turn it over to you to recognize Ms. DeSella.
School counseling is such an incredibly important position, and that was prior to everything that we've gone through over the past sort of almost year. And Ms. DeSella joined us last year. This is her 2nd year to go through everything with our students as well, and to be as positive and as wonderful as she has been. I mean, it's a tremendous addition to our team. From working with students that are obviously having some academic or some emotional struggles to just some of the day-to-day pieces. I mean, she has just been a phenomenal addition to our team and has really kind of brought our office family together and has just been great for our students. So wanted to recognize her and say thank you for all of the hard work that she does every single day.
Ms. Gisela, this is a certificate recognizing you and a little rating on your pin, but to echo Mr. Jinish's comments, you have just been a ray of sunshine joining our team. You have lightened up that counseling office. Not that there was anything wrong with it before, but you just are so student friendly. And I thank you for adding to that culture that was already great in the high school. You just magnified that by 2 more. So thank you for being such a great person. Congratulations. The next recipient that we have for our New Heights Award is Mrs. Dawn Schmeich. So Mrs. Schmeich, if you don't mind coming up.
Good evening, board directors, good evening, community. So I'm incredibly privileged to introduce Mrs. Schmeich today. When she won this award, the first thing she said was, "Ralph, I'm just doing my job." And I think you should keep that in mind. I'm just doing my job. That may be true, but there is not another school nurse that I would want to work with than Mrs. Schmeich. I worked with a number of school nurses throughout my career. She is tremendous. And what that means by being a school nurse during a pandemic, she's been in contact with over 478 quarantined individuals. She has spent countless Friday nights, Saturday mornings, Saturday afternoons, Saturday evenings, Sunday mornings, Sunday afternoons, Sunday evening, doing contact tracings. I would say about 150 phone calls to the State Department of Health, to the CDC. Her sole focus is to keep everyone in this building and in this school district safe, and she doesn't take that responsibility lightly. She is so focused on keeping all of our kids, all of our staff safe. It's just a tremendous honor to work with Mrs. Schmeich, and this could not be more fitting. So yes, you are just doing your job, but you do your job tremendously. So congratulations.
And Mrs. Schmeich, similar to Mr. Green said, on top of all the safety things you've done for COVID, you're just such a wonderful person, such a wonderful person. If this pandemic never happened, we still should be recognizing you just for what you do on a daily basis to make sure our kids are cared for and are healthy. So congratulations, Mrs. Schmeich. Well, very well done.
I'd like to thank all of the award recipients and echo those sentiments as well as the retirees. Thank you for your years of service. Greatly appreciated and left a mark on all these students and faculty. Moving on to student board representatives. We will start with the elementary school and high school.
The elementary school students have transitioned well into the new hybrid model. Kindergarten students are in school all 5 days of the week on a morning and afternoon schedule. When asked about the new schooling model, a first grader responded with, "I like having lunch and then writing a grammar after. I also like seeing my friends." Another first grader said, "I like the longer day at school because I like school," while one commented on the dislike of the smell of the hand sanitizer. Other students spoke about liking learning with their parents from home and bringing their pets into the virtual classroom.
Next week, the elementary school students will be celebrating Dr. Seuss's birthday with a spirit week connected to the books he wrote. Monday, students will wear pajamas to showcase the sleep book. Tuesday, students will wear the color green to represent green eggs and ham. On Wednesday, they will wear clothes backwards, inside out, or mismatched for Wacky Wednesday. Thursday is wear your favorite hat day, symbolizing the cat in the hat. Lastly, Friday is wear funky or mismatched socks to commemorate socks and socks. Kindergarten registration has now begun for the 2021-2022 school year. As of February 24th, there were 46 students enrolled for kindergarten next year.
Thank you. We'll move on to the intermediate and middle school.
In middle school, Student Council held their toy drive during the month of February collecting toys for the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia and the Lehigh Valley Hospital. All toys that have been collected will be delivered to the hospitals in March. In the past month, we held our Polar Pop Challenge for the Special Olympics, which was done in February. Students and faculty that participated in the challenge popped a water balloon over their heads to support the Special Olympics. Student Council also donated to the Special Olympics. The middle school students will be having a Spirit Week through the 15th and the 19th of March. The themes are not yet decided for that week and will be announced soon. In the IS, the students in the intermediate school participated in a Spirit Week in February. In 5th grade snowman building challenges, the tallest snowman was 8 feet. In 5th grade, students were challenged to build the biggest snowman possible. Miss Levingood's homeroom connected to their friends in Spain through the Impacto platform. Students also made virtual Valentines in February. 4th grade science made crystals with Mr. DeLong in science class.
The athletes are grateful to have had a winter sports season this year. The girls basketball team won their division and advanced to play in counties and districts. Their first game is this Wednesday. Boys basketball also qualified for the district tournament. Both boys and girls basketball held their senior recognition nights last week. For wrestling, 5 wrestlers competed at the regional tournament over the weekend. Dylan Reinert was a regional champion at 113, and senior Noah Frack earned his 100th career win. 3 boys, Jake Deischer, Dylan Reiner, and Noah Frack, are advancing to Super Regionals, which is the last tournament before states. The bocce ball team has had competitions this season as well, and they are 1-1 so far. Sign-ups for spring sports are available. Track and field, baseball, softball, and boys tennis are the sports that are being offered. Although it has been tough for many clubs to gather and host their normal events that are held, they are trying to make the most of it. Student Council is hosting a virtual Mr. Brandywine competition to allow for competitors to win a scholarship prize. Other clubs have been meeting virtually to try and connect the students to create some sense of normalcy. In the past couple of weeks, the underclassmen have been working on scheduling for next year. It definitely has been challenging to not have everyone in the building, but the guidance counselors, Mr. Barnhart and Mr. Jinich, have been doing a great job meeting with many of the students to make sure they go over all of the opportunities that they have for next year. As the end of the school year approaches, we are starting to reach out and see how to possibly coordinate some events for students in the spring.
Thank you guys for those reports and keeping us on top of everything that's going on in each building. Moving on, Andrew.
Sure. So I had a chance to talk with JT before we got started here. He said he was really nervous. So JT, Olivia, Tatiana, Megan, you guys did a great job. I know it's been a little bit of time since you had to do it, and now you're doing it in the auditorium, which kind of feels a little bit more pressure than myself. I called the elementary secretary, the elementary principal, so don't worry, you guys did a good job, and I'm feeling it too. You did a great job tonight. Thank you so much. Before we move on with the presentation, I would like to recognize that Capital Blue Cross provided a donation to the school district. It's a $1,500 donation, and that is to go directly to fund the COVID relief. So we'll be using that for PPE products. So I thought that was a nice way that Capital Blue Cross, for a health provider, is giving a little back. And again, it helps us with the PPE. Board, if you are okay with this, what I'd ask, we're going to kind of be back and forth a little bit fluid tonight. We're going to drop the screen down for the presentation. So if we can sit, if I can have you sit up in the front rows and spread yourselves out, we'll go down to the presentation. We'll do that in case you may one as well, but that way we can do the presentation. So as we start to transition to the presentation stuff opportunity, first I'd like to welcome everyone online from YouTube, those from the audience that in the community that joined us and are in the audience. Thank you for joining us this evening. Tonight, what we'd like to do is present what our investigations were of the possibility of a 4-day in-person model of instruction. So the administrative team has been working and meeting the last few weeks. We've done a lot of investigation. We've done research into what other county schools and other school districts that are engaged in a 4-day or full in-person model of instruction looks like. And through all that, came up with what we feel is a good recommendation for the community and for the school board of directors. So what I'd like to do is walk through this. We'll kind of pick it apart about what a plan would look like if the board would want to consider such an option. But we wanted to create that opportunity to at least engage in some conversation with the board and put an option in front of them. So that being said, I get the clicker to work. There we go. So I think everyone, just a little recap. We obviously are in the hybrid instructional model, 2 cohorts. Half the students come in on Monday, Tuesday. The other half come in on Thursday, Friday, with Wednesday being a virtual day. We also have a follow-along virtual option for students, as well as the Brandywine Heights Virtual Academy. With the hybrid model, what has worked really, really well this past quarter is that we've been able to maintain that 6 feet of distance. That has been critical when we think, and we'll talk about this in a few minutes, the attestation form we had to sign as a legal agreement with the state saying we had to keep 6 feet of distance. We've been able to do that. If there was COVID cases, because of 6 feet of distance, we've been able to evaluate the close contacts, and really there's not been a lot of close contacts within the school system because we can maintain that 6 feet distance. And if there was, when we had to close school, we could separate by cohorts because they were only in Monday, Tuesday. So there's a lot of positive things that came out of the hybrid instructional model, especially when the numbers were really high. We think back in January, and we were at numbers of almost 400 cases per 100,000. That was kind of off the charts from where we thought this thing was ever going to be. So that being said, we still did have to close the school. We had to close the elementary school 2 times. Due to COVID cases, we had to close the intermediate middle school 1 time, and then the high school 2 times as well. Some facts to consider as we went through this. There is a growing number of schools across the state, in the county, that are looking for that increased in-person instructional time. Any increased instructional time as we potentially consider moving away from a hybrid model is going to put more people together, and it's going to increase that risk of infection, that risk of increased quarantining. That's just the reality of more people together in a confined space. As I mentioned earlier, transmission rates at Brandywine Heights Area School District are very low because of all the things we've put in place, because of the 6 feet distance, because of the close contact tracing we've been able to do, because of the efforts of our teachers, our nurses, so on and so forth. We've been able to mitigate any really transmission issues within the school district. When you think about what this pandemic has done to students, to individuals, it has absolutely created social and emotional struggles for students across the United States. Brandywine is similar in that sense, where we have seen some increases in social and emotional struggles. And tonight is a great example. By recognizing Ms. Vicella as a new guidance counselor in our high school, our guidance counselors have been phenomenal. We've been able to work with some social workers, with counseling agencies, but between our teachers, our guidance counselors, we have really been able to wrap a lot of supports around our students as they went through some struggle.
And then the medical guidance still recommends 6 feet of distancing until community transmission is controlled. So you'll hear, or people will talk about, well, this report says only 3 feet of distance, and then the second line says until community transmission is controlled. And that's the key piece when we start thinking about, okay, what are the next steps for Brandywine and for our community. The district has conducted a lot of research, like I mentioned earlier. We've talked to the other school districts that are in an in-person model. We've talked to other school districts in Berkeley County, outside of Berkeley County, and looked at the data at a national level of what does it look like for schools that are moving towards an in-person model. So I give the team, the administrative team, a lot of credit because a lot of research was done into this, and out of all that information, we gleaned from that the positives that we wanted to include in our plan tonight. So some other considerations that I wanted to make sure we address before we start digging into the plans. How do we identify a case? I heard some different things and rumors flying out there about the district and how we identify cases. And I want to make sure we're completely open and transparent about this. I feel very good about our approach. I've been talking with our staff all along and say we want to be as open and transparent as possible through this process. So there's 2 ways to identify a COVID case. The first one is the easiest, which is a positive test. That's a pretty easy one. The second one is what's called as a presumed positive. And so that has 2 factors involved. One, you have to be in a close proximity of somebody that is COVID positive. And 2, you have to exhibit symptoms. So once you have those 2 factors, it's different than if I'm in close proximity to somebody that is COVID positive. That's just a quarantine, you were in close contact. When you start exhibiting symptoms, that's when it becomes a presumed positive, and usually that's supported by a medical doctor that says, for instance, someone in the same household, someone in the household might be sick, have a positive test. Someone else in that household, the doctor will say, don't get a test, you're a presumed positive because you're symptomatic and you are around somebody that is a positive test. So we have been more on the safe side of this, and have been including positive test results as well as presumed positives in our counts for COVID cases. And that's how we have been using our data, and that's what the CDC and Department of Health have guided us as well. The identification of close contacts, I think we all know the close contact definition anymore, 50 minutes over 24-hour period. We have been really good about, again, our processes, because of our teachers, because of the setup, because of the logistics. We have CD charts for the classrooms, for the buses. So whenever a case does pop up, we're able to go back and look and say, well, where was that student through the course of the day, and who were they close to? And we can then send messages out and identify those that are in close contact. And we also have been sending out messages that were in proximity. So if they were not necessarily close contact, but they were at least maybe in that general area, we let parents know that just to be able to be a little bit more mindful. we do the contact tracing that's performed 48 hours prior to the onset of the illness. So if you start feeling sick on Saturday, it's 2 days before that. 48 hours prior to that is when we start doing contact tracing. And then when someone's quarantined, they're quarantined either 2 ways. One, a straight quarantine is 10 days, or they can come back in 7 days if they go get a test after 5 days of the exposure. And if that test comes back negative, then they can return within 7 days. When there are cases, we have been using that Pennsylvania Department of Education and Department of Health guidance, so that frames out how we decide if the school is going to be closed or not. So the elementary and the high school, for instance, because they're small schools, between 2 and 4 cases, we're to close the school building. We don't have an option in that, and we've been following that. And that relates back to that information I shared earlier about how often schools have been closed. There is a range. So there's 2 to 4. And our philosophy has been, let's use the smaller number, the 2, because 1, it's a safer approach. And 2, if we would use the higher number, let's just say the 4, over a 2-week period, and that would trigger, and there'd be a 5th case, we would actually have to close the building for 14 days instead of just 3. So 1, it makes a lot more sense to be a little bit more safe with this and go with the 2. And secondly, if we would go on the higher end of 4, and then we hedge our bets and then we go higher than a 4, we'd have to actually close down the school building for 2 weeks. And that's a long time. So that's the reason why we used the number 2. That was a purposeful decision to use the lower number when making these decisions. A case for closure by Department of Education is this. The person is positive, and this is key, they were physically present in the building. So we keep track of the data of all the positive cases, but we also keep track of the data separately of positive cases that were physically present in the building. So that's the first piece. And then the second one is the infectious period. So that's the 2 days or 48 hours prior to when they started having symptoms. So if they were symptomatic or they got a test on Monday and that's when they were first symptomatic, we go back 2 days, so we wouldn't necessarily count that case from Friday because they weren't in school that 48 hours. And that's how we do the contact tracing. And then multiple household cases count as one. We had that instance last week where there were 2 siblings that both tested positive. We count those as 2 cases, but for the purpose of closing the building, that only counts as 1 case. I feel really good about the way we've been able to share that data. The site setup has all this information completely accessible, so you can see all the COVID cases over time, and specifically, you can see the COVID cases that are tracked to be able to close the building. If the school is closed for 3 days, that resets the clock. So in some ways, it's been wonderful that we've had snowy February, because that has reset the clock several times for us. And that's what we've been tracking here on our website. So as I dig a little deeper about an in-person model, so some legal considerations. I alluded to this earlier, this attestation form. So that is something that we signed back in November. The school board president and myself signed off on this. And it was at the height of things starting to ramp up with COVID. The state put this in place for all school districts across the Commonwealth. And they gave you 2 options. They said if the county is insubstantial, which Berks County was and still is, you have 2 options. 1, you can be completely virtual, or 2, if you're going to do any in-person instruction at all, which is, we're in hybrid now, so it's in person, we had to comply with this form, which said we're going to follow face masks and we're going to follow the 6 feet of recommended distance for our students. And so we've signed off on that. We've been doing a great job with that. If districts do not comply, there's been instances where there's complaints. PD does an investigation, PD can shut down the building and go completely virtual. So they have been enforcing this. It's not something where we just sign and kind of bury it back. It has been enforceable. The key here is that it's under substantial, and we are actually looking really good with our data. So Berks County and local data is under 100 for Berks County. We're at 98.5. You have to have 2 weeks of under 100 to get out of that substantial category. So this is week 1, which is really good news. The last time we were under 100 was October 8th. So it gives you an indication of kind of where we've been. Since January, the numbers have steadily decreased. So in January, we were high 300s, almost 400. And since that point, have continually dropped down to the point where we're at 98, which again, hasn't been seen since October. Likewise, our local data is dropping as well. So last week we were at 133, and we had a significant drop off down to 85 for our local zip code data. And that's all the zip codes within the Rainbow Heights Area School District. So the data is saying we're heading in the right direction. The data, the trend line of data for the county is heading in the right direction. So couple things here. One, this parallels what our health and safety plan is of looking at our county and our local data, and both are saying we're going in the right direction. 2, the attestation form says we have to focus on this county data solely, and we're almost out of that buffer zone of the substantial 1 more week. And if all things go as they are indicating right now, I think by this coming Friday, we will be out of substantial, which is great news for the county, for everything ahead. Some of the logistics to consider. So classroom size. One of the key things I want to make sure everyone is aware of, if we go this route and we bring all the students in, we will not be able to maintain 6 feet of distance. It's physically not possible. So I want to make sure everyone is completely aware about that. That means that mask breaks will not be possible because we don't have that 6 feet distance. So this is the chart that shows the average class sizes, and then the approximate distances within those classes. Lunches, that's kind of one of those non-negotiables. Kids are going to be taking their masks off to eat, so we have to find spaces where kids are at least 6 feet apart for distancing. That means that, for instance, in the elementary school, Ms. Kelly has developed new schedules for lunches. She has those logistics worked out. We're going to have to add lunches. We're going to have to use other spaces like the new construction that has just occurred at the elementary school to put students there to space them out to be able to accomplish this with 6 feet distance. At the high school, for instance, obviously we have the cafeteria, but we don't have enough space and capacity in high school. We can't add to the lunch schedule based off of the scheduling system in high school. So there's locked periods, we can't adjust that. So that means we have to use alternate locations to accommodate those number of students. So there's going to be students eating in the gymnasium. There could be students eating in the auditorium. So we might get Facebook pictures or social media pictures of kids eating, not in the cafeteria, but in the gymnasium or in the auditorium. I just want to make sure everyone understands that that's what we have to do to be able to accommodate and make this work. Okay. So again, I just want to be open, want to be honest about how we're approaching this in the data and the information we have. Transportation, bus routes, they will need to be rerouted. So I think this is the 4th time we'll be rerouting buses to create a plan that has all cohort A and cohort B together on one bus. Currently, we have about 36 students on a 72 passenger bus. So there's good opportunity to space students out. By putting us together, we're going to have to add some buses. I'll talk about that in a second. So we will have to add some buses. And it also will mean that siblings will need to sit together. So that way, because they're the same household, we'll purposely have them sitting together and still be able to kind of have that somewhat same distancing as we do currently. That's what that's saying. BCTC transportation, we'll talk about BCTC in a second, but that will need to be considered as well. Temperature checks. So temperature checks, we're going to continue with the temperature checks. It's a really good safeguard as we transition in. It's a nice safety measure. Interestingly enough, we've had two students that we've identified with temperatures that have come through the course of the whole year. So it has yielded some results, but not as many as you would think necessarily to say, wow, there's a lot of cases. But I think it's still, as we transition, we think about bringing all students back, it's still a good safety measure to put in place for now. So we're going to keep that in place. We'll see how that transitions. We know it's going to slow the process down with entry of all the students at one time and temperature checks. But again, I think it's a good safety measure that we keep in place for the time being as we transition here. BCTC. So currently BCTC goes to school AM or cohort A, Monday, Tuesday, cohort B, Thursday, Friday. BCTC as a whole, as an educational organization, is virtual on Wednesdays. So there's not opportunity for students, even if we were in school Wednesday, to go to school to BCTC on Wednesday because they are virtual, they're shut down. The schedule going to a full 4-day-a-week in-person schedule would be that students in BCTC would go Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. So all students would go 4 days a week to BCTC. Wednesdays would still be virtual. Wednesdays, they would come in here for school for their grade 1 classes. And then they would be done, as you can see here, about 11:25. And then they'd have the opportunity to stay here, continue doing BCTC virtually, or be able to go home and do their virtual BCTC classes from home. And again, we talked about transportation. We're still working on some logistics there with transportation. Some other considerations, staffing considerations. So in a typical year, we have about 50 subs that come in day to day. There's someone that's sick, we have a sub, they fill a slot. This year we have 13 active subs. I give the board a lot of credit for looking at our day-to-day subs. At the beginning of the school year, we had these conversations, I think it was back in August, and we purposely hired day-to-day subs. And those folks are in every single day, whether they're needed or not, which they are, but they're in every single day. And there's subs at the elementary, at the middle school, and intermediate school, as well as the high school. And so there's 2 to 3 per building, typically. And then again, they come in every day. So that has really helped us because we don't have the regular sub pool that we normally this is the absence summary for just February. So the interesting thing is that we had a lot of snow. I don't know if everyone noticed, we had a lot of snow. The February 1st to 6th, we were only in school one day. 7th to 13th, we were in 3 days, 14th to 20th, we were in 1 day, and February 21 to 27th, we were in 3 days. The interesting thing is it correlates the fill rates for the gaps correlate with when we were in school. So when we weren't in school, we had high fill rates because the teachers were able to work from home, even if they were quarantined. When we were in person, you can see that the numbers dropped off pretty significantly, and that's a trend. So the reason I point this data out to you is because the more we bring people in, again, like I mentioned earlier, the more risk, the more concern over quarantining, and so there most likely will be times where we might have to shut the building down and go virtual because we don't have the teachers to teach the building, to teach the students. And that's the reality of moving to this option, is that it could result in the building shutting down because of not having enough staff. And if you recall, we did have to do that on, it was like a quasi, weather day, quasi, not having enough staff day a few Fridays ago. And that was kind of a similar situation. So again, we want to make sure we thought about all the different angles and want to present that to the board, to the community as a potential impact. Expenses. So we also looked at expenses. The first one is plexiglass dividers. So the plexiglass dividers, if we are under 6 feet of distance and we are still insubstantial, we have to have some kind of barrier around students. And so if we're going to move this direction in working with getting some advice, we have been told that the best way to go about this is to put plexiglass dividers in place. Now, if we move out of substantial, it provides a different opportunity where we maybe don't need this or don't need this many. But assuming that we're still in substantial, and assuming that we go to a 4-day-a-week in person, not able to keep 6 feet of distance, we have to have these plexiglass dividers, and there's a cost for that. Custodians, again, similarly, if we're going to come back and we're going to have a lot of our lunches that are occurring, we have great daily custodians, and we've adjusted schedules that second shift custodians start around lunchtime to help with this process, but to bring all the students back at one time, it would be most ideal to have additional custodial support. And so we're looking at 2 additional staff members for the daytime for the high school, 2 at the intermediate middle school, and then 1 for the ES. Again, lunch is the primary concern, but we would station 1 person at one each floor, particularly this building in high school, so that they could do more frequent cleaning while the students were in the building. And that's the purpose there during the daytime. So there's a range of what that cost is. Admittedly, this is very difficult to find custodians right now. It is challenging to find staff members. So we've been working with a company that we partner now for custodial services, and they unfortunately have not been able to get additional custodians for us. So we have engaged in some other conversations with other companies, and that's why this range is in there. So we have started doing those investigations. We haven't committed anything, obviously, but that is some potential cost there, what it would be if we went with 5 additional custodians for the last quarter of the year. Some other supplies, tables for lunches, to be able to spread more students out, increase para hours, to be able to monitor at the elementary school in particular, the other locations and the additional lunches. And then another one of consideration that we're proposing to the board is to add a 3rd grade teacher. So currently there's 4 3rd grade teachers. Typically in all our other elementary schools there's 5. Because the 3rd grade is abnormally low, we were able to pull the 1 teacher off, and that 5th teacher is actually one of our virtual teachers. It's working well, and the size is actually really good, 19 to 22. That's a great class size. The problem is that because we closed the elementary school, and now they're up here, they're in a little bit smaller rooms, and so the spacing is tight. You can see it's about 2.5 to 4 feet. So if we add a 3rd grade teacher, it buys us a little bit of breathing room in that classroom. The class size has dropped down to 15 to 17. The downside to this, as you all already are probably thinking, is that we're going to have to pull some students apart from the 4 existing 3rd grades, combine to make this new 3rd grade for the last quarter of the year. So that, there's definitely a downside to it. The benefit is you get the space and a little bit more breathing room there within the third grade. So the approximate cost there is $20,000 for the remedial year. And then the rest, these last two items are more PPE, KN95 masks. So if we're going to have our staff be in a situation where the 6 feet of distance isn't attainable, we want to make sure that they are properly cared for in terms of masks and protected. So there is a cost in there for masks for all the students or all the staff members for the rest of the year. You know, that's the kind of worst case scenario, but the numbers there, and we'll purchase them as needed. Additional PPE, masks, sanitizers, wipes, those sort of things, that's $3,000. And then the last item on here is a potential cyber charter cost. So when we did our research and we talked with the other schools, those that went in person had an escalated cyber charter cost. I don't think that's going to be a question mark. I don't think that's going to be an issue. It's a question mark up here. The reason I don't think it's going to be an issue is, one, we're towards the end of the school year. So if we were at the beginning of the school year, we were having this conversation, I think this is a tremendous reality. Because we're at the last part of the school year, and because we have the virtual academy, because we have the follow-up on virtual, there are opportunities within our school system that I think we can mitigate this and we won't have this issue. But just as a rough numbers, if a regular education student leaves, it's $15,000. If it's a cyber charter student or a cyber charter special needs student leaves, it's around $35,000. So those are real numbers that can quickly add up to be a significant cost. So again, don't think we'll be there, but when we did our research, it was definitely something that came to the forefront that what other districts shared with us as a cost impact. Other considerations, so the vaccine rate. So at this time, the CDC is not recommending or advocating that teachers have to be vaccinated to come back to school. You've seen from the President Biden talking about more in school time. You've seen the CDC come out with recommendations for more encouraging, for more in-person instruction. So they have also come out, CDC has said, it's not mandated to have vaccines for educators. There is some promise that we are starting to see vaccines come in. Obviously, the Johnson & Johnson vaccine being released as a third option is a great opportunity for staff, so we'll see where that goes. And then the last piece here is PA is still in a phase 1. So what we are able to do is work with St. Luke's. They're our health provider. They have been a great partner with us, and they have created opportunities for educators that really for anybody, but they specifically also target educators. If they're in that phase 1A, they have medical conditions or some other health concern that falls within that category, they can get the vaccine. And so that has helped some of our staff members. We also have been partnering with St. Luke's. Hopefully, vaccines start to come out a little bit more readily available. And we've talked with St. Luke's about creating pilot programs where we actually tried to have St. Luke's come out and do the shots here within the school district, but because of transportation, they're not able to do that with the storing the vaccine. So we are setting it up to have our staff go there to get the vaccine in a block of time. So we have like a Wednesday afternoon, let's just say from 2 to 4, where our staff can go and get that vaccine. So we've been in conversations about that. The problem is just the availability of the vaccine. They're so ready. We're signing up to be a pilot to do that. Again, just the availability. So, and then the last piece is that we've been asking staff to optionally report to us if they received the vaccine. So we have a running chart of staff members, what vaccine they got, what building they're in, and then the first and second phase of the vaccine. That helps us track for close quarantine, because if you're vaccinated, you do not have to quarantine in a close contact situation. We considered a whole bunch of other options. We considered a 5-day in-person option. We considered remaining in a hybrid instructional model. And we also considered a staggered approach to reopening. The staggered approach was probably the one that was most picked apart, if you will. But the concern with the staggered approach was a couple things. One, there's a lot of logistics that go behind it that we decided it just wasn't worth doing it, and I kind of held the position that if we're going to do it for one group of students, let's just say the elementary school, why aren't we doing it for high school? Vice versa, if we said, let's bring high school students in, well, why aren't we doing it for the elementary school? I feel like if we're going to put our position that we're okay with having students come in all the time, then let's make it available for all our students. Secondly, there's the concern of somewhat, it's the reality of it is that a child care, if there's an older sibling, there's a younger student, they're on different schedules, that can be a concern. And then the third thing from an academic standpoint, if you look at it and say, well, let's bring the younger students in first. When we look at it, our high school students are they're having the most significant academic loss compared to our younger students. So I don't say that to say our teachers are doing a phenomenal job of reaching out and working with their students, but when you look at the spectrum, our high school students are having more struggles academically than our younger students. So again, when you look at that staggered approach, I think it makes sense to say, let's bring them all back in, because that way we can support the students that are struggling academically. So our recommendation is this. We would like to recommend that at the beginning of the fourth quarter, which would be on March 25th, that we provide that opportunity to return to a 4-day in-person instructional model. That would put us in a position where the current Wednesday, which is virtual, would move to Friday. The reason for that is strategic. One, we can clean on Fridays, and we get to sanitize the building, and it sits for the weekend. So it gives you a nice opportunity to clean. It's not a midweek. The midweek now is perfect because you have one set of students clean, and then you bring another set of students in. Because we are now transitioning to all the students coming in, if we clean Friday, it creates an opportunity where we create a bubble where there's no one in the building for those 3 days. And likewise, if we create that bubble and no one's in the building and no instructions occurring for 3 days, that resets that COVID clock. And you go back to that chart of closing school, so we can essentially reset that COVID count on a weekly basis because we have to close the building for 3 days. So it's a twofold: one, from the safety aspect of it, cleaning, and two, it gives us that opportunity to reset that COVID clock. This model would also shift, our recommendation is to shift kindergarten from a half-day model to a full-day model, and they would just follow the regular schedule. The 4 days, Friday would be virtual for our kindergarten students. And I mentioned earlier about the busing and the 2 buses we would need. We run 2 buses in the midday right now for kindergarten, so we keep those drivers, keep those buses in that cost, and just tag that on to our normal runs in the morning. That's how we would get those additional 2 runs. So pending the support tonight, if the board would like to go this direction, we would do a survey to our families. We talk about transportation, and then we give them 3 opportunities: full in-person opportunity, full remote live stream. So that live streaming model would still be an option. And then the third one would obviously be the virtual academy. So we're going to ask families to commit to that if they would like to do the full remote, we completely understand. We will continue to support that. We've gotten some good feedback on that, and we'll continue doing that. The idea, though, is that they're not moving in and out. Like Tuesday, I'm going to come to school. Wednesday, I'm going to be virtual. You're making a commitment for a period. And if a family chooses to do the live stream lessons, and then at some point says, you know what, I'm ready to have my child come to school, that's an easy transition. Call the principal. We just need to make sure we have a desk and have things set up for you, and we'll go. So it's not like you're locked in forever, but we don't want families moving in and out, or the students moving in and out on a daily basis. Couple things I just want to reiterate, because I think this is key. We will not be able to maintain the 6 feet of distance on the classroom or in the buses. So any increased students that are in the building is going to probably result in more quarantine, because we may have to quarantine like a whole classroom now, instead of just maybe no students or maybe just those couple kids around them. So again, we need to make sure we know kind of what we're dealing with and know all the risks. No mask breaks, I talked about that earlier. And then if there are too many staff members that would need to be quarantined, we would have to shift to virtual learning for that time.
Mr. Cotter, could I just interject real quick?
Yes, Mr. Wilbur.
Just as a brief comment here, and I've talked from the back of the auditorium, so I'll make my way up. We do take that CDC guidance of 6 feet very seriously. But it is worth noting that in our research, as we've been having conversations with other school districts that have been back full-time, both in our county and outside, we have found similar transmission rates. So whether we're 3 feet or 6 feet, that rate of transmission that's occurring within the school building itself is fairly consistent and consistently low. So as we are proposing this new plan, it is not a plan we propose lightly. And when we do look at reducing that distance, that is something that we have investigated thoroughly. So I just wanted to say that.
That's perfect, Mr. Colfer. Thank you. It's a great segue to say, again, things are looking a lot better than they were they did back in November or even December, January. We kind of did that bell curve and we're coming back around. So that's why, to Mr. Volker's point about the research we've done, about what other school districts are seeing, and what we're seeing with the cases, things are beginning to show a lot of promising relief. And that's why we feel we can come to you with this plan this evening. So kind of next steps as we sum things up here. If the board would like to proceed tonight, my recommendation would be we use this language to approve updates to the Random Health and Safety Reopening Plan, permitting in-person instruction 4 days a week beginning the start of the fourth quarter. We would add that to the motion and report of director's report before your motion is made. And then we would adjust the health and safety plans based off of the approval this evening, so we can do that pretty much like after the fact, do that this week and then get that posted. We'll conduct a family survey, as I talked about earlier, about education model, transportation, as well as BCDC. And then we will continue to finalize plans through the start of fourth quarter, March 25th. And finally, this is kind of my plea to the community, to those that are listening, but if we're going to go down this road, and this is something the board would like to entertain, that means we're going to bring a lot of students back in. Things are going to start to lessen up. It's going to be nicer weather. It's going to be a lot more people out. And my plea is just, this is all our effort to keep our kids safe. It's personal choices. So just be very cognizant about what you do. Mask wearing, social distancing. It's probably we're all so tired of these stupid things, but just the more we can do to protect ourselves and the choices we make, better protect our students, better protect our community, and better protect our opportunity to stay in school. So that is my plea to the community, is if we're going to go down this road, regardless of going down this road, but if we're going to go down this road, please, as we get to the nicer weather and people gathering, just be very mindful of what we're doing so it protects everything, our community, our schools, etc. That being said, that is the end of the presentation. I asked Ms. Henry earlier, hopefully I kept it, I tried to speed through it, sorry. Board members, questions before I think I'll transition for back to Mr. Ryan.
We're going to transition and then, so it's for Mike for questions.
Yep, I'm good with that. Is there any points on here that we would need before I turn this off? That you want to go back to any slides? Okay, then why don't we go off and we can do questions? How's that?
Yeah, I know. I hope you're right. Are there any questions or comments from the board?
So I just wanted to ask, on that plan, you talked about masks and purchasing more masks. One of the guidance that I would recommend too is not only masks, but goggles. In the healthcare setting, if we have patient-facing situations, we wear masks and goggles. So just something to clarify that. Face shields, goggles, whatever, what have you.
So we do have face shields available for that. That's a good point.
Okay.
And the other thing I did mention earlier is I appreciate that, John. The way the system is set up right now in the classroom, because teachers are teaching virtually, they're with their computer, they're not teaching like they normally do. So they're not out and about like they normally would be teaching. They're kind of locked in And so that gives us, our teachers, the opportunity to have that 6 feet distance with the teachers at least. Not as much with the students, but it does create a little bit of a bubble, particularly at some of the higher grades where they're kind of locked in. Before the teachers are kind of live streaming.
Sure. Yeah.
With great consideration for the basic.
And when you're talking plexiglass, are you talking plexiglass in every student in every building?
It would be in the classrooms that would be less than 6 feet.
Okay.
And they're basically dividers that are three-sided dividers that they would have.
Okay.
In the lunchroom as well?
Lunchrooms would not, because we could maintain 6 feet.
Now, I guess the other last thing I'll ask is, why would you consider another teacher at the 3rd grade level $20,000 increase when you really can't, in either situation, change much in that distancing, right? The way I was reading that, it's like maybe 1 extra foot, right? So if you have plexiglass there, why would you need to add that price tag of 20,000? Just my personal question, opinion on that.
Yeah, it's a great question. So when we looked at it, again, those are tight rooms, and you're right, we don't need 6 feet, we don't need to change a substantial amount of space, but when you go into the feel of that, it's really tight. So the numbers look like it's just a small amount of increase, but when you look at that road, pull out price, it doesn't indicate the feel of it is pretty significant. And so that's the reason we recommend it. It's one of those situations that if the board's not comfortable with that, it's one of those that it's not the end of the world, because we can put plexiglass in, but it would be nice to be able to add that in there as an opportunity.
May I chime in while we're talking about that, because I did have a specific question about that line item on the chart. Mr. Potter, I think you may have mentioned that that staff member is currently assigned to sort of teaching virtually. So is it assumed then that that person, that individual would continue to teach virtually like that, and that we would hire a new long-term substitute? And that's what's creating the incremental salary expense for that 45-day period, correct?
That's right, yes. It's when I say teaching virtually, it's the virtual academy.
Okay.
Yeah, you're exactly right.
Okay. And just for folks who aren't used to necessarily seeing salary numbers, it was an $80,000 annual figure, of course, prorated for those 45 days. But that $80,000 annual salary for a long-term substitute is calculated including medical insurance and full benefits.
That's correct.
Okay, I think it's important for people to understand that.
2 party benefits plus all the other associated costs for benefits that go with it.
Okay. And then the other thought on this topic that I was having was, it is possible based on the family survey that some families with 3rd graders may choose not to send their 3rd grader in. And if we had enough families of 3rd graders make that choice to stay remote, that we might not need to pull those 5 kids out and create a new classroom.
Yes.
Correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
So we want to give you worst case scenarios and put all the potential costs out there. So you're spot on, yes.
Right. Okay. And I would echo Mr. Tomasi's both suggestions in terms of, if you really think it makes sense, you know, I would vote to support you on that, but it sounds like if we're already pushing the boundaries of the spacing, that with the addition of plexiglass and some limits in terms of how the kids move around the classroom, it may not be necessary, but certainly your call. And I would also echo his suggestion about eye covering. I recently was told by a healthcare professional basically, she painted this visual for me, which is if someone coughs, you basically walk through their cough cloud, and while we're covered over our mouth and nose, our eyes walk right through that germ field, if you will.
So we have space now, we'll add in.
And the KN95s, that's enough explain how you would provide staff with that more superior type of mask covering.
So what's in the cost budget is for the teachers to have one every single day for the last quarter of the year, which is 45 days.
Okay.
So that's, again, kind of worst case scenario, and we make it available for staff. If they want to get it, they want to do a 95 mask, they would just go to the office, ask the staff, so for the cost for the 95 mask, which we distribute.
The third grade possibility, how would you decide like who would go? I mean, that's very impactful on the students, the teachers, the families. So how would you decide? I don't know, would you kind of put it voluntarily or, you know?
So we had, admittedly, that's not quite as flushed out. So a lot of this, we're still working on some details, but that one in particular, we went first of all, and then if that didn't work, worst case scenario, we have to do a lot of things. So,
Mr. Potinger, we can't hear you.
sorry about that. Can you hear me now?
No.
I don't think that one's on.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Andrew, I have one more question about third grade. Where exactly do you plan on putting this other classroom if it goes through? Because if I remember correctly, because of the elementary project, we put those kids up there in that hallway and then one around the corner, and I don't remember another classroom available. Am I thinking wrong here?
There actually is one more still available up in that corridor wing, because we used the one corridor and then we came around the other side, which was in normal years, 7th grade wing. There is one more classroom there, but I'll turn it over to Mr. Farina. There's Mr. Farina. Thank you, Mr. Farina.
Sure. Just to answer the questions regarding third grade, Sarah, to your point, that is an incredibly impactful decision to move a student away from a teacher they've been with all year. So I think obviously the first piece we would look at is a voluntary move. Their families would want to do that. Currently speaking with another school district in Montgomery County who's had to do this year, and looking at the procedures that they went across to do that. The teacher who was in third grade that is teaching Virtual Academy, prior to the plan to move that teacher to Virtual Academy, that teacher did have a classroom in what was in that third grade wing. So there is an unoccupied room that we are able to move that staff member to, if the board were to entertain that. And to go back to the earlier questions about one additional foot, you're correct. I think if the board moves forward with plexiglass, or does move forward with those dividers, you know, that's where that foot distance does become less impactful. But again, those rooms are our smallest rooms in the building, and that's where we really see classes of up to 22. Mrs. Hune, your original question about if families were to choose to go full remote, that is something that we will be watching very closely. What we have seen throughout when we return to hybrid, we are seeing the majority of our remote students come at the upper grade levels. So it is a sliding scale, the younger the students. Currently, right now, we have 11 third graders who are fully involved in the Virtual Academy. And we have one third grade student who is fully remote, where they live stream in every day. So that's where the numbers are currently. And if, you know, obviously, if we do move forward with this plan, to me, that's the most impactful student number of that parent survey is, will there be any third grade families who do opt to go full virtual? And if they are, how does that impact what those classes are? So as it says, at a full vote, there are 19 to 22 currently between the four teachers.
Thank you, Mr. Farina. Yeah, this third grade is definitely a challenge one, and please don't take this the wrong way, but it's definitely not the hill to die on in terms of we absolutely do this or we're not going to do it. Because there's two sides of it. One, you're disrupting the culture that's within that classroom, and you're disrupting that whole thing for just the last quarter of the year. On the flip side, it is a little bit more of a safer route. And so, we wanted to outline it as a potential cost, and if it's something the board doesn't want to pursue, or if you want me to just look what the survey results are and kind of reevaluate it some more, we can definitely do that.
My next question is, March 25th is a Thursday, correct? So that week that they would come back, would they be virtual on Wednesday and then you'd go Thursday, Friday, and then from every Friday on, then they wouldn't be in? So you would use that first Friday?
That's correct, yeah.
Okay.
So the thought is we use Thursday, Friday, March 25th and 26th as in-person days. The nice part is we would have right after those 2 days is all spring break. And then we would come back Monday, spring break, and then Tuesday we would kick back in with the normal plan, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday would be virtual, and then the normal thing for the rest of the year. We contemplated waiting until after spring break, and the reason we decided not to was it gives us 2 days to try it out. And if we can get 2 days and then have spring break, if there's any issues, if there's any hiccups, it gives us 2 days to flush or it gives us the next week, the students aren't in school, but staff are, and we can flush that out, make any corrections, make any adjustments, bring the students back in after spring break, and we can have a little bit more smooth flowing process.
My next question is, you said with the new Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, the case count would roll over every week. So there would be no more 2-week average, correct? It would have to basically be, you know, whatever the case count, and just say it's 2 for the small buildings. We would have to have 2 in a 4-day period to shut down school, according to that, because it's gonna roll over every week, right?
That's correct.
Okay. That was my line. Oh, next question. Just for, I guess, with the current sports situation, with the basketball, can you explain so I guess so maybe the public understands, like if that would happen in like softball season, how that actually works, so everyone knows why something may get shut down? Because I got questions, I got texts and emails about that, why it happened, and blah, blah, blah. So if you could explain it and let them know what could potentially happen.
Yeah, no, it's a great segue. I appreciate that. In talking with some staff members, that question came to me as well. So if I could just go high level first with what happened with the basketball, and kind of easily explain then what would happen with a spring sports scenario. When students are together, particularly in basketball, they're really close. And so while there's a lot of safety precautions in place, our teams have done a phenomenal job. Our athletic trainer, our whole athletic department has done phenomenal. I can't give them enough credit for what they've been able to pull off this winter. Especially Mr. Geis and all the rescheduling he's done. The process is we quarantine the whole team when there is a situation of a COVID case, because it's really hard to identify when you were in close contact, but you were in close, because it's that 15 minutes over a 24-hour period. And so how do you determine, well, I'm blocking you off right now, and then now I'm not, well, that was 30 seconds, now it's 40. So we've been, again, always trying to take that more precautious route. And so the team, that's been our stance all along, the team quarantines if there's a case. So that's what happened on the basketball. In the terms of what would happen in spring sports, if there is a case that would happen in the school building, and that classroom would have to quarantine, because the student was in there, we can't really identify close contact anymore because of the 3 feet, that classroom has to quarantine. That means that student would be quarantining from the team and wouldn't be able to play sports. They would be a secondary removed. So they're the one, they had the contact with the person in the classroom, but they're not the person with COVID, so it wouldn't shut down the team. If the person was on the team and also had the COVID, of course the classroom would shut down that person, but the team would shut down because that person has COVID and that team is also then exposed. So it's either if someone is positive with COVID on the team, it shuts the team down. If someone is positive, if someone has been quarantined but doesn't have the positive because they're in close contact, that's what they call secondary removed, and so that other influence doesn't have to shut down.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense.
Okay, great.
I just wanted to explain that I tried to explain it via text to someone and just so everyone knows.
Perfect, no, I'm glad it makes sense.
Any other board comment?
The only other quick question I have, there was a mention of the cost, the incremental cost. Is it reasonable to assume that those costs, those incremental costs would be covered by the COVID grant funding that the district has received?
Yeah, so the district has received several grants this year for COVID relief, and so that would be the intention, is to use as much of that grant funds to cover those costs, those incremental costs, to be able to make this work. Yes.
Thank you.
Great question.
Are the companies that you're working with for the additional custodial staff, are they sort of guaranteeing that we will be okay in that respect, or they can't?
So if we did not engage in other outside companies, I could not put a guarantee on that we were going to find somebody. With working with some of these outside companies, it seems from what they're at least preliminarily telling us when they gave us the quote, is that they would be able to fill those slots for us. So, I think when push comes to shove and we have to actually put someone in place, it could be a little bit different, but at least for now, they're giving us a quote saying they would be able to fill that need. Yeah, so when we would use the gymnasium in high school, obviously gyms also occurring. So we would have to either, if they're occurring simultaneously, find other spots for that gym to happen, or find other lunch spots, and then we would have to clean up after lunch, take those tables down, move them, and then be able to resume gym periods in the afternoon for the remainder of the afternoon. So we would be dual using those spaces, yes. And which is, again, part of the reason why we're looking for the additional support for custodial services for cleaning, taking down, spraying disinfectant before next year for kids come in that space. Specifically in the gymnasium, they are going through, Mr. Wetzel, can you help me with that question? There was a question about additional air filtration systems in the middle school. I'm sorry, the gymnasium.
Gymnasiums are large air handler units. We have the filters in there changed 4 times a year. We can augment it with more changes.
What's the air exchange rate?
What's that?
What's the air exchange rate?
The air exchange rate.
It's 20% normal per hour. Or per cycle is what they have it set up at now.
Is that per hour?
Yes. And that's also done through, those are heat exchange wheels, so that's done a little bit better than what it does in a normal air handler unit.
All right, then we're going to open up to public comment. What we're going to do here is we're going to take public comment in regards to the presentation that Mr. Pottinger just gave us. And what I'm going to do is we had the sign-up sheet in the lobby, and I'm going to take folks in order of their name on this list. And I would ask that you keep your comments limited to 3 minutes, and you state your name and address. And then if there's any other additional comments from any other residents who didn't get to sign up, I ask you to come forth and state your name and address after the folks on this list have completed. So with that, we will start with Linda Peterson.
I'm not real sure where to stand here. My name is Linda. I'm a parent of an 8th grade student, and I actually came today. I had written to the school board several weeks ago about the possibility of reopening. For any kind of background information, I'm a registered nurse. I have a certification in infection preventionalist, and I work at a skilled nursing facility. I am very well versed in COVID. I eat and sleep and breathe COVID. That said, I've also seen the devastating effects it's had on my child being out of school. I can cite numerous studies throughout the U.S. showing the low transmission rates in schools. I can cite numerous studies showing the effects of grades on schools, on children in virtual schools. The incidence of failing grades has more than doubled. The incidence of absenteeism in children being virtual schooled is tripled. And the incident rate of transmission among schools, children actually attending brick and mortar schools is very low. So I'm here to ask that the board reopen the school to 4 days a week. I know I'm not the only parent here who feels the same. I think that the risks versus the benefits at this point to our children far outweighs the risks of them staying home is far outweighing the risk of COVID at this point. I'm watching my child who has been on the honor roll consistently since first grade, has never gotten below an A, who is now flunking a class. This is not normal for pardon me? Yes. My child, like I said, has never been below an A on anything. He's in the advanced algebra classes. He's in advanced classes. He wants to take the AP classes next year. This is not working for him, both emotionally and scholastically. And so I need to ask that the board reopen the school.
Thank you very much. I would just ask when someone is speaking to try and keep the comments in the audience to quiet so we can hear up front, because we don't have the same amplification up here that you guys do. So with that said, next one I have here on the list is Aaron Clark. Alrighty, thank you. Mrs. Hefner.
Hello, my name is Dina Hefner, and I live in Rockland Township. I'm a parent of a first grader, and as the previous commenter mentioned how she experiences COVID at her job, I also come to you how I experience COVID at my job. You see, I teach public high school. I teach public high school in a building where we have been open for hybrid and are transitioning to a full in-person model. I cannot stress this to the board enough, except the recommendations presented by Mr. Pottinger. It is what the district's students deserve. It is what the district's parents and guardians deserve, and it is what the district's taxpayers deserve. I cannot stress it enough. When the district went to full virtual, I was incredibly upset that this school board would sacrifice the chance for in-person education. I am a teacher. Virtual does not work for most students. Virtual, if it works for students, separates students from their peers. My daughter's in first grade. She learns tactilely and socially. You don't do that at home on Zoom on a screen. If you look at where our country is heading, the federal government is not postponing standardized tests for us. The president has remarked of having a goal of reopening a certain number of schools in the 100th day of his presidency. I did see mention in the Reading Eagle this morning that Berks County is at moderate spread, and yes, we are under 100 cases per 100,000 in the county. Mr. Pottinger spoke of the social and emotional struggles that virtual learning presents. I'm here to tell you it does. This school board has the power to do something about it tonight. I encourage you to vote for this plan. Our students deserve it.
Thank you. Stacy Klein?
I no longer need to speak.
Thank you.
You said everything I need to.
Jamie Bortz? Oh, okay, perfect, thanks. Brian, sorry, I'm having a hard time with the.
Owen Shelley.
Owen Shelley.
I don't really need to say a whole bunch either. She said it, couldn't have summed it up any better personally. One quick question, with the temperature checks, what is the threshold that is defined as having a temperature, and if so, does that result in any, if my kid comes to school and hits that temperature number, are they going to be quarantined, or what's the path after that? That's all I have, thanks.
So I can walk you through the process of temperature checks, and forgive me, I forget the exact threshold of the number that they use. I believe it's 99. I know our staff are very fluid in that, just because I don't deal with it on a daily basis. I forget that exact specific temperature number, but again, I believe it's 99. The process though is if a student is identified as a temperature, they pull them aside and they go into the nurse's office. Sometimes they're warm because they have a coat on. Sometimes they're really low because they're cold. They just came from the outside. And so they'll recheck. They'll have them sit for a little bit. They'll recheck the temperature. If that doesn't work, they'll recheck it a third time. And then if it is still high, then that's when we make a call home. We do have in our nurses, all the nurses' rooms, there is a separate COVID room set aside. So if it is a potential COVID case, we can isolate the student from the other students that might be in the nurse's office. But again, the process really is, let's double check before we do any other sending students home. That's honestly why we've been able to catch the 2 students that we did have to send them home with fevers, but also mitigate sending false positives home by rechecking.
Have they been quarantined? So if they have a fever and get sent home, are they then quarantined?
It only happened to 2 students throughout the year. So the normal process is if someone has a fever and they go home, unless it's COVID related, we would just follow the normal flu process, fever free for 24 hours, and then they can return to school.
Thank you.
Kim Sterner?
I'm Kim Sterner from Rockland Township. I'm actually not certain I really need to be speaking, but did want to say thank you for putting together a plan. I'm sure as many of you know, the community temperature has probably been kind of hot lately with getting back to school, especially with all of our surrounding districts that push, or at least that touch us on the neighboring sides being back in school and starting to move the high school students back in school. Mr. Radiger stated that he thought coming back together as a district full time was important, which I can appreciate. And I can also appreciate, for those of you that don't understand, I am an elementary school teacher. I have been back in school full time since October, and that extra day or that half day on a Friday or that virtual day is also needed, because as teachers, we're required to also make sure we are making the appropriate gains with our virtual students who are virtual 100% of the time. And although that time is being used for cleaning, I can assure you that teachers are also using that time to meet with those students and maybe the students that aren't able to come into the building. And I just wanted to point out that for the maybe some of the community members that don't understand why 5 days wasn't considered over 4, that extra day is really essential for teachers. But I also just wanted to say thank you for moving forward and starting to put together a plan for getting our kids back to school, because they need it.
Thank you. Sandy Benner?
Hello. I unfortunately don't have a list prepared. I'm from District Township. I have a 9th and a 10th grader. I too echo Mrs. Hefner and Mrs. Peterson I have two students who have normally a 4.0 to maybe 3.8 grade point average, and this is my first quarter. I've got one of them that has a 69 and one of them that has a 78. They are both working diligently, but they both are struggling at this point with the virtual. I can't stress enough as well to please reopen our schools. I'm also a nurse. I think the infection rates are doing much better. I agree. I've seen it from both aspects. I've had family members die of COVID. However, they had lots of comorbidities, and they could have died even without that. So basically, the only other question I have is, when Mr. Potter had the slideshow up, you had said the VCTC students would be Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. But then in the reopening, the plan is to go Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. So really, they'd only be going 3 days then? I'm kind of confused on how that's going to work.
Yeah, that's a great question. I probably should have better clearly articulated that plan. So I'm glad you said that. So Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, BCTC students will have the opportunity to go to BCTC. Friday, Granny Lane will be closed virtual, but Friday, BCTC students can still go to BCTC.
So I would have to stay home to be able to transport my daughter here to get the bus. Is that what would happen?
So at this point, we are working on transportation. We have not solidified if we're going to be able to provide transportation just for BCTC students, but that would be part of the survey that we send out to families.
Okay. And then what is, and I don't know that this has ever been discussed. So I don't have students that are IEP'd, obviously, but they are desperate to go back. My daughter is planning to email Ms. Usella this week because she is feeling overwhelmed and stressed. She's worried about college. She wants to be a PA or a surgeon. Her grades matter. They matter now because she's 10th going into 11th. And she feels like she's not getting the same education from BCTC. Is there a way that if they don't have an IEP and they see, like for instance, now she's got these grade drops, that she could come 4 days a week even before this reopens?
At this point, the 4 days a week is just for our students with an IEP. That's how we have it set up. So beginning fourth quarter, March 25th, if this will be approved, that would be the transition point.
Okay, I think that's it. Thank you again.
Thank you. Next, we have Nicole Smith.
Can I bring her too?
You sure can. Yeah, we have Nicole and Michaela.
Michaela Smith. I want to go back into school full time because I like to see my classmates, and sometimes it isn't fair because there's a specific schedule, and some of the class in the Monday, Tuesday group wants to do some of the stuff in the Thursday, Friday group. And the Thursday, Friday group sometimes wants to do some of the stuff in the Monday, Tuesday group. I don't care if we have to wear masks, but all I want is to be in school full time. If I am taking a test on my computer and if I accidentally click on something, my test can be gone and I will get on paper in school. I got an answer wrong in math today and I wanted to tell my teacher private that I got the answer wrong. But I can't because the Monday, Tuesday group was with him. If I was in school, I could ask him privately.
Nicole Smith, Rockland Township, Fleetwood. I first want to say thank you to whoever put the new slide together about the new model that was presented tonight. I also want to I did send an email to the board, and a lot of the questions that I did have in the email was answered by the presentation tonight, so I really don't have a whole lot to say. I do want to say, though, that my daughter is in 3rd grade, my son is in kindergarten. I really don't have much to go off of with my son due to him being in school the first year this year. My daughter, this year, and more so when we were fully virtual, she has gotten her worst grades that she's ever gotten in elementary school. It's very hard on her. It's very hard on her when she comes crying to me that she got a grade much lower than what she has gotten previously. Not due to the teacher not being good. The teachers, in my experience with my 3rd grade and my kindergarten, have been excellent. There is not one thing that I can say wrong, that they have been above and beyond doing everything that they possibly can. And so this is nothing against the teachers. They are doing whatever they can do. It's hard as a parent for her to come to me and cry to me because she got a bad grade. And this is solely due to not being in the school and have a teacher there. Just for instance, today she called me at work because she got a problem wrong when they were learning with subtraction. She didn't want to say to him in front of the whole class that she got it wrong, in hopes that she didn't get made fun of or anything like that. If she was in school, she could have raised her hand and had her teacher come to her privately and said it to him quietly. It hasn't been decided yet about field trips for these kids. It hasn't been decided yet if there is ever going to be an assembly this year for these children, especially the elementary school. We don't know that yet. It hasn't been said yes, it hasn't been said no. Taking that away from those children, at least if they were in school, at least they could have an interaction with other students, at least getting out on the playground and playing. Since they won't have those things, possibly, at least let them be in school and have their peers with them and have them have that interaction and be able to just experience school, I guess. Basically, that's really all I have to say, is just that these kids deserve to be in school and to have that teacher face to face. But thank you for the model that was presented. I'm very happy with it. I mean, for the circumstances of what we have to deal with. Thank you.
Thank you. Tamara Oakley?
Hi, I am Tamara Oakley. I'm from Topton Borough, and I have 4 children in our school district. 2 of my children are actually IEP students and are struggling significantly this year. I have a 1st grader who's autistic, who she does not go in virtual school anymore. So we have a very difficult time, and I'm very happy to see at least a 4-day full-time in school schedule, even with the snow days and everything. She has not been able to be in school because of those. She loves her 4 days that she is in right now, and Wednesday is useless to us for her. She doesn't do anything. So, but I am wondering, with the new schedule, are they going to do a 5-day schedule? Are they looking at anything different for the IEP students to continue to help them get through? Or are we just sticking to a 4-day schedule for them?
So at this point, the plan proposed is to do a 4-day just like we are now. Wednesday would just switch to Friday. And again, 2 reasons for that. One is that we can do the cleaning in the building, and 2, it resets that clock for the week. If we do any type of in-person instruction, that would negate that, and we would not be able to count that.
That's understandable. Thank you for the information. But I really appreciate what you guys have come up with. Berks County did good moderate today, according to Governor Wolf. So the first thing you had talked about, the form, I'm sorry, I don't know the name of it, wouldn't really affect us anymore. So that is a big help as far as I understand.
Yeah, just to clarify, you have to have 2 weeks in under 100 to get out of that substantial. And so we have 1 week, so 1 more week will be in that moderate. So
Are you saying Berks County or
Yes,
our
Berks.
school district?
Berks County.
So Berks County was pulled out to moderate today. Yep, it was in the Reading Eagle, it was also in, on WFMZ.
Okay.
You want me to take that? I think the attestation form talks about the 2-week average, where you're right about the county currently being set at moderate. That's based on 1 week. The attestation form is a 2-week average.
Yeah, but that was before, you said it was based on, okay, never mind, we're not gonna get into it. But, so that's a big deal. Also, are we gonna go to the 7-day average, that the CDC is now doing under their new, so we have a 2-week average right now. They're now suggesting a 7-day average.
At this point, we're not recommending any changes to the health and safety plan data metrics. We're planning to keep that the same as it is.
Okay. All right, well, I hope you guys take into consideration our children, in this aspect at this point. I have a 4th grader who, she's failing. She was an A student and she cries every day because she can't be with her friends, can't be in school, can't talk to her teacher. So I'm really looking forward to moving back into full day schedule. Thank you guys.
Thank you. Romeo Crumpville?
How you doing? Romeo from Lonesome Township. I got about 4 kids in the school. Mr. Parker, thank you very much for putting this up for us. I was very surprised to actually see it. My only thing that I would like to add about it is, why spike the bar to go line? Why not go 5 days? Why can't we clean the school afterwards?
So again, we had looked at that potential of a 5-day, we examined that, and the reasons we decided not to were, 1, so we could clean the buildings thoroughly on that Friday and let them sit for the 3 days, and then 2, by not having instruction for 3 days, it resets that COVID counter, that COVID case count. If we don't do that, and we would have any in-person instruction in the building, we would have to continue with the 14-day rolling average. And you saw the data earlier, we had to close the elementary 2 times, high school 2 times, and the intermediate middle school 1 time. So by doing this and not having school virtually on Friday, there's still 5 days of instruction, one of them is virtual, but it would alleviate us from having the potential, for the most part, of having to close buildings for 3 days plus by using that 14-day rolling count of COVID data.
Yeah, but there's no other building that I know of that needs an extra day just for cleaning, not supermarkets, government buildings, or anything like that. I understand that it adds extra staff for cleaning at night. I totally understand it, but that also messes up with other people's schedule, right? Some people are like, oh, right, I have to go to work now, but not almost, not full. So can we just also take a look at that? Just do it the whole way, carry the ball in.
I appreciate that. Like I said, it's one of the things we considered. The parent aspect of it was absolutely a strong consideration why we looked at it, but in the end, we decided that the recommendation leads to the board is the 4-day. That's the plan for now.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that did not get to sign up that would like to speak? Yes? If you would state your, turn on the mic and state your name and address, please.
Hi, my name is Jeffrey Lorenz from Long Swamp. I'm a Brandywine Heights senior. I know at least from a student's perspective, it kind of sucks having that current hybrid where the other 2 days of the week you're sitting in the back of the classroom. I know the teachers are working really hard, but quite honestly, so far it seemed impossible to find that correct balance between managing the online students and managing the students in class. I know there's been a lot higher caliber of education given to us while we're in person during this current schedule. So I do ask that we do go back to, we do go to the 4 days a week. That way we can get more class time and get that higher level of education that I think we deserve. Another thing is the whole temperature checks. So far, ever since it's been cold, every time me and my buddies walk into school from the parking lot, reads too cold, they just send us right in. No standing to the side or anything. So I'm just wondering if there's better ways to mitigate it. So that way we don't continue to run into that problem. But I do ask that we do go back to the full 4 days. Thank you.
Yes,
Can I come up and speak?
yes.
Good evening. My name's Sarah. I'm from Towson Borough. I have a high schooler, I have a third grader, and I have a kindergartner. This year has been horrible, not only for my children, for myself mentally. Excuse me, I'm sorry. It's a real struggle every day, I just gotta say. Keeping my younger ones on that computer. I don't understand how, when we do have in school, it only goes till 11:30, 12. But when they're home, it has to go till 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Why can't we follow the same times as if they were in school for the time being? Why do we have to go all the way till 3 o'clock in the afternoon? You know, they're in school, that's, you know, the days that they're in school, they're in there. My one daughter gets out 1 o'clock, you know, even for kindergartners. Kindergartners are only going till 11:30, but when they're home, it has to go out till almost 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I personally think that's a lot for a parent. You know, that's a question I wanted to ask you, why we have full days while they're in school, they only have the half days. How is it fair for us as parents?
So the schedule for virtual students and the regular education on a Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, it's the exact same schedule. So when they're virtual, they're just following along with the schedule of the students that are in class. It's the exact same schedule. Wednesdays, or on some of the snow days, what we've done is we have used an abridged the Wednesday schedule, the half-day schedule.
Right.
On those heavier snow days, we also, the theory was use the Wednesday half-day schedule as well. But on the Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, it's the full day hybrid, which is the exact same schedule as the schedule of the students in the building.
Well, my kids must be going longer because they're falling so far behind. And the teachers just take the extra time. The teachers have been excellent, I have to say that. I have no problems, but it's been a real struggle. And I just wanted to point it out to the board that, you know, these kids deserve to be in school. As many other parents came up to speak and said, you know, basically what I'm saying. I think it's time they're back in school, you know, to be with their friends. You know, I have 2 of my children that are in therapy now because, you know, they're taking this so hard. It's hard for them. There's no socialization or anything. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you. Is there any additional comment from the board?
I have 2 quick questions that popped up based on speakers. Thank you, everybody, by the way, for sharing your thoughts. And particularly, I think it's to Michaela Smith. You did a great job, young lady. Well done. That's courageous. One question was just to clarify, the gentleman who asked about 5 days, Mr. Pottinger, made me think about this issue with athletics. So if our spring sports teams, will they be practicing 5 days a week? Assuming they are, if there's inclement weather, and that those teams are brought into our buildings would they be brought into our buildings on an inclement weather practice day on a Friday? And if so, then your answer to that gentleman's question made me think about, if that's the case, we lose our 3-day bubble, so to speak. So could you address that?
Because it's not, so sports on a Friday will primarily be outside, because you have softball, baseball, all those are outside sports. If it was for some kind of inclement weather, they have to come into the practice for that event, because the way the PD works it is, no instruction may occur. And because it's not physical classroom instruction, it still is okay to have those students come into the building. But we're going to mitigate that and not use that. Our athletes will be outside for the most part.
Okay, all right.
It's only worst case scenario.
But if they are inside for practice, it doesn't violate it's not considered instruction. I would just suggest that we really pay attention to that, though. If we're trying to create this 3-day window, and we do need to allow the athletes to come in for indoor practices on rainy days or whatever, then that extra cleaning really becomes important because you're losing your 3rd day. Yes, okay. And then the second thing, just to reiterate staff and teachers. So it's the board's understanding, I believe, that Brandywine teachers have been made aware of this plan and are supportive in general. In other words, we need to hear, and probably the public needs to hear, that this is sanctioned by our staff and faculty and that they feel comfortable with your recommendation.
Yeah, I appreciate that segue. Our staff have been phenomenal. I say that to everyone I've talked to. Our staff, we are so blessed to have wonderful teachers. I feel so blessed to be able to be working with these people. So they have went above and beyond. They've been flexible. We've changed models in and out, and they have been just so resilient through this. I did have an opportunity to present this presentation to them this afternoon, right before the board meeting. They knew what I would be presenting to the public before, obviously they saw it for the first time. And so I did that at 3:30 this afternoon, and then opened up the opportunity for them to ask questions, and we were able to work through any concerns that were put out there.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments on the board? All right, hearing none. What I'd like to do here is see if there's a motion and a second to approve the proposed education model starting on March 25th that Mr. Pottinger presented.
Favorite moves.
So the actual motion would read to approve updates to the BHASD Health and Safety Reopening Plan permitting in-person instruction 4 days a week beginning the start of the 4th quarter. So we have a motion and a second.
Yes, Beaver.
Thank you. Mr. Bruder, can we get a roll call, please?
Mr. Beaver?
Yes.
Dr. Carter?
Yes.
Mrs. Eisenman?
Yes.
Mrs. Henry?
Yes.
Mrs. Young?
Yes.
Mr. Twomey?
Yes.
Mrs. Wallheiser? Mr. Ryder?
Yes.
8 yeas, motion passes.
Thank you. Before we move on to the board of directors, I would just like to thank the administration for putting together a fantastic plan and allowing students to get back to school 4 days a week safely. And I'd also like to thank the teachers and parents for doing such an awesome job in this horrendous time. So I just want to thank everyone and for all you've done. So moving on, board of director report. Can I get a motion and a second?
Motion. Second.
I'll turn it over to you, Mr. Pottinger.
So we had the board of directors report going back into the actual agenda now. So here we go. So a couple items on the board of directors report. The first one is the approval of meeting minutes. That was from our previous meeting. in February. Any corrections that need to be made to those meeting minutes? None heard, we will proceed forward with that. We have second reading policies. There are policies that were presented last month. Those were the first reading policies. There are second reading policies. The one I'd like to point out is the graduation requirements. There is updated wording and revised language for students that are able to take college courses. So there was a small tweak there from the first reading to the second reading. We do allow our students to take college courses, but we didn't have that clearly defined in our policy, so that's the reason for that adjustment in the graduation requirements. Under C, first reading of policies, there are 5 new policies: complaint process, management team, compensation plan, substitute compensation, and then overtime. And so again, as we looked at our policies from the 300, 400, 500 section, combined them together, there are really no significant adjustments to these policies that were currently in place. They just are combined now into the 300 policy. Any questions on section B or C for policies? Not heard, I'll keep moving forward. Item D is appointing Ms. Bruner as the board secretary on a temporary basis. So we worked with Mr. Pratt as well as our auditor to talk about who would be best suited to be the board secretary, because we officially need to have that position on the books. They approved the meeting minutes, they approved some of the other things. Typically that is held by the business manager, but it is suggested that her role would be the best position for this. So we're asking for Ms. Bruner to be approved as the board secretary on a temporary basis until a new board business manager is approved. Any questions on that? And then finally is to approve the meeting that is scheduled currently on the board calendar is Monday, April 5th for the next meeting. Monday, April 5th is a closed day, so we missed that in our planning when we had to approve the meeting minutes, the dates back in December. So my request is we consider moving this to Tuesday, April 6th, the meeting, as a scheduled April meeting. One, again, the building's closed. Two, there's a lot of staff that are not in that day, and so it would result in a lot of people coming in. And so if the board is willing to consider this shift, I know that staff members that are here would greatly appreciate not having to be here on that day.
Okay. All right, moving on to committee reports. Mrs. Hune, DCIU.
Hi, I submitted the written report, so it is as it appears. There's just one thing I wanted to draw board members' attention to, and that's a reminder. The Pennsylvania School Boards Association is hosting its spring virtual advocacy day on Monday, March 22nd. So if you're interested in participating in that, you can register yourself through the mypsba.org website. But otherwise, things are reported in the written document, and the next meeting of the BCI Board of Directors is scheduled for Thursday, March 18th. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Sheets is not here. Did you give you anything for BCTC?
BCTC report is linked from the BCTC page. So that is linked.
Perfect. And currently, Mr. Nyman sat in for the Berkson earned income tax.
I don't have any updates.
All right. Mrs. Walliser, COLA. Yeah, that one's working.
Sorry about that. There we go.
Okay, my report was a little lengthy. So Hannah Barrick was the assistant, or is the assistant director of HASBO, and she gave some highlights on what the legislative priorities are for schools currently in Pennsylvania. And there were some definite positive news, some also not so good stuff going on. One of the main things that I thought was positive to hear was the charter school reform policy. The state's looking at making it a flat rate of $9,500 per student. Currently, our range goes from $9,170 to $22,300. So this could be a huge savings for our districts. The good news with our legislators is that they are recognizing that there is more state funding that is needed for education, especially with all the mandates that they're requiring. However, the current budget that they are looking to, or that Wolf is looking to have approved, has a lot of different moving pieces that it's still too difficult for any of them to really come to a consensus on. In fact, a lot of the thoughts from the local senators were pretty rough and tough on him. So her advice to districts was to just continue to be conservative on all of our budgets, not count on all this money that they are hoping to get passed, because there's just so many things that could factor into it. Our local BCIU, as Ms. Yoon had shared with us, is doing an advocacy campaign for 3 different areas. And our own superintendent, Mr. Pottinger, is now co-chairing the COLA committee with Dr. Fadley from Wilson School District. He's going to be the lead administrator for the 3 advocacy effort groups. His is actually on the state mandated training. So we're very excited to have Mr. Pottinger in that role. And in conclusion, I also attached all the advocacy pages on the website and my report, so you can follow up on what the campaign priorities are. And it's always motivating to attend these meetings because it makes you realize the importance of having a unified voice for the 70,000 plus students in Berks County in Pennsylvania, that there are a lot of people out there doing a lot of wonderful things for our kids, and our legislators and our administrators are all just working so great together, and it's just very uplifting to see that after leaving one of those meetings. So, if you have any questions, let me know.
As we transition back to budget, I had the opportunity with the other superintendents as a part of that leadership group, Dr. Bailey in particular, the Wilson superintendent. We met with representatives and senators last week and rolled out those 3 advocacy platforms there, special education side of the charter schools, focused in on the importance and some of the next steps. So some good conversation. Again, we talk about that collaboration between those elected officials and school board officials or school officials. It was a great meeting. That's the next kind of step in the advocacy plan, getting those lawmakers to know the concern.
Dr. Gardiner, any additions to your policy? Thank you. Mrs. Eisenhardt, strategic planning, any additions? Mr. Sheets, assuming he has no additions. All right, building construction committee, we did meet, and we have a presentation coming up in the next section. There's something else you'd like to add to that?
I just put a summary in there.
Very good. Any other discussion on those items? Anyone? Hearing none, Ms. Bruner, if you could take a roll call, please.
Dr. Carter?
Yeah.
Mrs. Eisenhardt?
Yes.
Mrs. Henry?
Yes.
Mrs. Hughes?
Yes.
Mr. Swansky?
Yes.
Mrs. Walliser?
Yes.
Mr. Beavers?
Yes.
Mr. Wagner?
Yes.
8 yeas, motion passes.
Thank you. Moving right along here to business and operation report. Can I get a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. I'll turn this over to you, Andrew, to.
So what we're going to do is we'll transition back down front again. We have Mr. Kelly and Mrs. Bortz here, and they're going to give an update of where we are with the KCBA project of redoing the inside of this building, the intermediate school and middle school. The building committee has been meeting with KCBA. We've been working through the plans, and so this is one of the final steps in the process in terms of timeline of showing the entire board where we are, talking about budget, and then talking about timelines and next steps. So, Mr. Kelly, Mrs. Bortz, I'll turn it over to you.
Sit in my seat.
You need to redo the space.
Well, you should see what my chair says.
Oh, I think I know. I wrote it.
Hi, perfect. Thank you, everyone. Appreciate the opportunity to come out tonight in person, which is nice. I'm Mike, that's Jamie. We're going to go over what has been a lot of work in a very short time. We are essentially at the last meeting with the board before we will go out to bid. What that means is we'll put construction drawings out publicly for bidders to bid on the project. In Pennsylvania, you're required to have 4 bidders. That's a general contractor, mechanical, electrical, and plumbing. So you'll actually be hiring 4 different companies that will all kind of come in and collaborate together to work on everything. So tonight we wanted to answer any questions anybody has. Very quickly kind of go over the scope of the project. A few things that we think have changed to the positive in the last couple of weeks. With, again, a lot of meetings. In fact, at some point, I think we were meeting twice a week over the last few weeks to kind of rein the final scope in here. So I'll quickly go through part of that. We're going to review, as I said, the design and the project scope. And then essentially, you'll be looking at approving the final scope. So what that's doing is it's saying, here's the final estimate of what we're going to include in what we'll call the base bid of the project. And then what several alternates will be. Those alternates will be things that contractors will provide their own number for. What that does is allows us to say, okay, here's the minimum amount of work. If that comes in on budget, great, that's what we'll do. If it comes in a little under, then maybe we can add a few things. And sometimes we find numbers that come in and goes, hey, you know what, we were going to do that as a building maintenance project next year, but that's a good number. Let's include that now. Let's pull money over from another budget area. Let's do that now. So it gives everybody some options to consider on bid day. This is a floor plan of the entire first floor. What is in gray, tan, gray-ish, is what we're saying is kind of a low to medium construction. So that's basically finishes. That's ceilings and lights and flooring and paint. That's a lot of area. All of the corridors in the building, this room, the cafeteria space, the library space, the gymnasium. It's a lot of work that's being covered in the entire scope of the project. Anything that's in blue here is what we're considering heavy construction. So that's what we're talking about when we're moving walls. We're taking out a wall that's existing. We're moving something around. So you can see there's not a lot of heavy, which is good, but there's a lot of that kind of low to medium construction area. Upstairs, it gets a lot similar, where you've got this gray area here for the medium renovation, and then the blue in the middle for heavy. That's the common space, that's the LGI space. So that kind of shows you every space in this building that's public, every corridor, the library, this room, the gymnasium. Again, a lot of public spaces are all going to get renovated, all going to be improved. When you open that classroom door, you're back into that classroom pretty much the way it looks like now. There's some unit ventilators and some mechanical replacements of some places. But the budget is really restrictive to public spaces, common spaces, and areas where every student, every child will be walking through. So we talked a little bit about just cleaning up the front door, as we said. This is essentially showing a painting of the existing canopy here and the addition of basically a larger signage that comes out of the top and says, hey, this is the front door, not the auditorium front door. So we zoom in a little bit here. There's a lot of lighting there as well underneath this. You have right now, these are kind of all open. This would be closed off with a linear metal, some lighting that's within here. So at night, that kind of glows and really shows the front door of the school. We think that'll provide some additional security measures from people walking around trying to open up random doors throughout the outside of the building. When people show up to the site, you've got kind of parking spread out around the site. If there's a bright area, if there's an area where the signage of the front doors, that oftentimes is a security upgrade. So once we get through those front doors, what's the next thing we see? Well, right now we have 2 doors that go essentially into the nurse's suite and a very large plaque here that's a dedication plaque from the original part of the building. What we're looking at doing here is moving one of those doors over a little bit so we can still get into the nurse's suite, eliminating that other door that's not needed, and just creating an area for student information and display, student work that could be displayed here. This becomes a little bit of a bench with the Brandywine Heights School on that area there. So we're just, again, trying to aesthetically clean up this area a little bit and provide some areas for student information and student display. You can start to see going down the hallway here to the gym, walls that are painted, new ceilings and lights, and floor patterns, and we'll show you that here. So the existing corridors, lots of lockers, lots of gray block that sometimes is shiny gray, and sometimes is dark gray, and sometimes is green and yellow and orange. So one of the goals here was to repaint all of that so it all becomes a similar color. Create some new flooring in here. You can see just a little bit of color, a little color here with new tack boards, taking out a lot of the lockers, especially in the main corridor between the administration area and that first common space that we get to on the first floor, and putting in a lot of areas here, again, for student display and more information boards, kind of staggered throughout that initial corridor. New ceilings and new LED lights. Every light that's replaced in the building will be with LED lighting. So you finally get to that first floor commons area here, and this is really, here and upstairs are the 2 really big splashes that we're seeing with student collaboration areas. Here's a little animation kind of coming to that zone here. And you can see instead of those angled walls, instead of the kind of just pinup space that they have there now, this really opens up into 4 corners of areas for student collaboration. A lot of areas where students can come from the 6th grade wing, which is down the hall, or from upstairs. That stair is right there. We've got a lot of ways where students can come down from upstairs down to this area, or utilize a very similar design on the 2nd floor that you'll see. That's the 1st floor, that's the 2nd floor. Very, very similar. You can see the difference here is you've got the library door there, and then on the 2nd floor, you've got the hallway that continues down the 7th and 8th wing. So 2 main spaces right in the heart of the building on both floors for student breakout spaces. So a real big splash. Another big area that's a splash is the existing LGI space, which has been for board meetings, teacher meetings, and things like that. It's again, right in the middle of those 4 wings upstairs, right in the middle where we have 4 grades of classes, and breaking that into a STEM space. So essentially what we have here is kind of our dirty lab and our clean lab. So up here is computers and technology and laptops and areas where you would go to design. Then you come out here, we've got lots of storage, lots of cabinets, sinks for students to actually construct their projects. So the purpose of this room is to be fun and messy. We have a lot of storage. What we hear from teachers a lot is they love these types of rooms, but they don't want to bring their things with them. If the pens and the scissors and the paper and the Legos and all those things are already here for them to utilize, it's a much more utilized space and a much better opportunity for teachers to bring a class. This is large enough that certainly 2 classes could be here at a time for that kind of collaborative space. Some of that curriculum certainly could move up from your STEM room downstairs as well. So a couple of different areas for televisions, large whiteboard surfaces, short throw projectors, a lot of technology and a lot of areas for student engagement on that in that space. So here's another view kind of looking back at the doors back to the corridor again. But larger areas for TAC, whiteboard surface here, then that kind of clean lab here with the larger dirty lab out front. Right out front, aside these doors, you have the existing lobby. Essentially, again, new code-compliant railings, new finishes on the stairs, ceilings and lights, and again, another kind of a larger signage coming into the auditorium. Another view there, kind of looking back. In this space itself, we had an acoustic consultant come in. It was a virtual day here. They came in with a lot of loud banging sounds to test all the lighting. We had to let everybody, or the sound, had to let everybody know that the loud banging was perfectly okay. This was the design that we're looking at for this space. You can see acoustical panels on the wall, getting rid of the, I think the point right at this, the kind of carpet strip up the side here, adding some additional panels, and here we're showing wood panels all along that wall. The ceiling up here goes black. We've done this in a couple different areas where now that, especially the light that you have in the cove light, is really nice, and there's a lot there. That kind of light will really shine down here again. You could probably do the same thing you're doing right now, where just keep those lights on. You don't really need a lot of house lights to create a nice comfortable feel here. But if you're having a lecture or something that wanted additional lighting, some kind of strip lights that would come across this ceiling here, and make this look a little bit more of a theatrical stage here. You see some acoustical panels up here that are going to push some of that music, push some of that sound further deeper into the space. And then with the calculations that the acquisitions have done as far as how much it wants to reverberate back, and then in the back area here with some acoustic panels kind of absorb some of that, so you don't get too much of an echo kind of coming back and forth. So all new flooring, all new seating. This room was really one of the high priorities of the project.
New stage front too, Mike, right? The new stage front as well?
Yes, is that shown? That's shown sort of here.
Yeah.
So the stage front stays here, and then everything out in front of that is essentially risers. So it's like steps. So rather than the tiny little steps behind there, or these that are right to the side here, they all come all the way down here. What's nice there is now we don't need to store our bleachers out in the hallway anymore. The risers are essentially included in part of the stage design. Thanks. Cafeteria space, again, this was a lot of concept here was just about finishes. Flooring, ceilings, walls, some acoustic panels here along the wall. So those were some of the things that we had shared in the past. Some of those are slightly updated images. Obviously the images in here now with the calculated acoustical panels for the auditorium. So a couple of things that have changed since the last time we saw the entire board. The first is the base that we've been showing before has been the addition of these restrooms here and the trainer moving to this space. At one point we had the trainer up here, the trainers into this space here. So the trainer entrance from the field is actually a little closer in this sense. We thought that was a good idea rather than having the trainer up in that area. And essentially all we're doing in the trainer room is just blowing out some lockers. There's a couple areas here where there's some lockers in the middle of the room. We're just going to remove them, patch the floor, bring in all the trainer's equipment into that space. We're creating one unisex toilet in the corner there. And other than that, that's it. Very limited space, or very limited work in that area. But the trainer has to move as we move that person out of this space for the restrooms here. One thing that we were asked to consider was, well, if the wrestling room is here, and we have a weight room back here, a storage room, there's a lot of activity that goes on this corridor, could there be some additional work documented and reviewed back in that area? So what you're looking at here then is moving the wrestling room to this space, incorporating that storage room. So the storage room is here. So we kind of split the storage room in half with the wall of the wrestling room, and then the other half of that space is part of the corridor there. So a lot of parents, a lot of guests are coming in here waiting for students. There would be 2 additional toilet rooms that sit here that are right outside of the wrestling room and the gymnasium as well. So that we thought was a nice additional complement. Now we're doing a lot of work back there that we weren't doing before. So that added cost to the project, and you'll see later that we are going to break that out as an alternate. So that's something to look at and consider. If that's $400,000 and it comes in at 3, great, maybe that's something to do. Maybe that's, if the project is right on budget or over, well, maybe that's something that we want to hold off and do another time. But that's an additional part that we are asked to document. We'll include in our bidding documents, so it'll go out in 2 weeks. and we'll investigate the pricing of that. The last bit of, well, there's two more. Last bit of administrative change here. There's a large open suite here. One of the concerns that we heard was there's a lot of, there's two individuals in particular that are basically in open offices. And one of the challenges with administrative offices as well as high school administrative work is, middle school administrative work is confidentiality. There's a lot of phone calls nowadays that need to be kept confidential. If people are just walking through open spaces, a lot of times things can be overheard that may be uncomfortable to be overheard. So the idea here was to add 2 offices into this administrative area here. So these 2 offices, we're adding a sink to this workroom and a restroom that is essentially directly off the central administration. This allows administrators really on either side to utilize that where they're not using student restrooms. So that's a positive as well. So this little area here, it's not overly big, but that's something that we added to the project as well. We can talk about that area. We kind of estimated that at about 163,000. So you're starting to see some numbers associated with some of the alternates. Probably one of the biggest moves, and this is an effort to actually reduce and pull back on some scope of work, was our original design showed a demo area of this commons area here and all the way through the library. The workroom here, this wall here, all of this in here was essentially moving back to that column line. So there was a lot more demolition going on in the commons area as well as the existing library. So what you saw was the new entrance of the library is back here. We have some small group spaces, new workroom, another small group room, and a much larger large group instruction space. This totaled about 1.6 million in the amount of work that was in here. It's quite a lot of work and a lot of demolition that was going on in that space. So one of the ideas was we really like the commons area. We really like that there's a sister or a twin of that upstairs. The concern is how much we're spending in the library. So we said, all right, well, maybe we remove the entire library as part of that demo area. We just focus on the commons area. And essentially what you get, we get a new pair of doors here because we do need to create that corridor through here to eliminate the dead end corridor. You can't go more than, in an unsprinkled building, you can't go more than 20 feet without being able to exit the building or enter another room. So if we're coming down here, we would be further than 20 feet and we can't just exit that way. We have to actually exit through the corridor. So we could still create code-compliance exits here. And you would keep the library the exact same size it is now. You keep the workroom where it is now. It's a large space, but that's okay. And essentially what we're doing, the only thing we really eliminated was taking about 500 square feet off of this large group instruction room. So that room now is about the size of a large classroom. It was about 1,500 square feet, now it's about 1,000 square feet. So this room gets a little bit smaller. The library stays about the same size that it is now. We're taking out some of the furniture. We were calling for a lot of an additional or new furniture in the library. So we're going to pull back a little bit on that. And we think that saved us about $500,000 of not going into the library here, not redoing all the ductwork, not pulling this wall back in here, not rebuilding the workroom and spaces like that. So we think that's a good move. And that's something that we're moving ahead with now as essentially the base bid. So we thought we were able to pull a lot of money out of that space.
Mr. Hill, can you just go back and just talk a little bit about what will happen in the library though?
Yeah, so in the library, we are showing, we missed that there, but we would be including those small little SGI rooms from this piece here. So those are still in the library. And the images that we shared with you before that show new carpet, new lighting. You have the lighting that's in there now is kind of big and bulky and hangs down. All of that's going to get pushed up into the ceiling, all new LED lighting, all new carpets, all new flooring, all new paint. So there's still a lot of work. You're going to walk through those doors and it's going to look brand new. And what we were saying in some of our building committee meetings is you're not going to walk through those doors and not see what's not there. What's not there would be the reworked workroom back here, or another small group room here, or a new reception desk. You're gonna walk in and it's gonna look fantastic. So we said that move of pulling all of that work that was basically just in this area, and then all of the mechanical work and things like that was happening in the ceiling to allow for all that, created a bit of a drastic reduction in cost, without what we think is a drastic reduction in the finishes. Second. So the next slide is a long list of items, so that you may not be able to see that. I blew that up here. This is part of our budget. This is how we kind of line items each piece. We went through and felt how much that cost per square foot. We put a laundry list of price tags for this building here. And then we're adding contingencies, construction contingencies. So if we take all of those things out of the base bid, so what's not included here is the administration fee. Or actually, I'll get to that slide in a second. But what is included is everything on this list, as well as some building repair pieces in here as well. We have hot water heaters, HVAC replacements in a couple of different areas, as well as some unit ventilator replacements that were felt to be a high priority. All of that lists at about $5.2 million. If we add a construction contingency in here, what this number is being used for is anything that may arrive during construction. Inevitably, somebody's going to open a wall, somebody's going to open a ceiling, and we're going to find something and go, we better fix that. That's a good idea to do. We bring that to the committee and say, here's why we think this is a good thing. It's going to be $5,000, $6,000 extra. We know that's just the case because it's an existing building. So we want to create a bit of a fund to make sure that we're accounting for any of those. Soft costs and furniture allowance. This is for a lot of the areas in the common areas, as well as the LGI space. Brings us to a total project of just a little bit over $6 million, which has been the target. I will say that construction prices are skyrocketing right now. There is an immense amount of construction competition out there. We have quite a few contractors that we know from a lot of the work we've been doing in the Lehigh Valley, so we're in the process of contacting them, letting them know that this is a project that's coming out. But this is a very expensive time to be building. Fortunately, it's a smaller project, completely internal. So there are some advantages there. We're starting a little early. We have an area like the auditorium that's going to go through September and October. So there are some advantages there. But we're a little concerned. And that's why we wanted to make sure that we were creating a base bid area and then a list of alternates, things that we want to include, but we may need to consider as they come in. So here's that list. You saw the finishes that we were looking at in the cafeteria. You saw the relocation of the wrestling room, the administration area. Some things are minor, like painting the gym, the folding partition in the gym. Those are all things we can get numbers for and see what they look like. Air conditioning is very expensive. We know we like the gym air conditioning. This was adding air conditioning to the auxiliary gym in the weight room, adding some more unit ventilator replacements, as well as a rooftop unit for the cafeteria. So we're bidding what we estimate to be about $1.7 million worth of alternates. All things that if that $6 million is a little less, here's some things that we can choose from. Even if it's not, you still have a couple of things that you may select to include. Some you may say, hey, great, thanks. Glad we looked at that number, but we'll pass. We'll do that another time. So with the total budget, if you were looking at the base bid and all the alternates, you're looking at a total construction project of about $7 million with a total project at about $8 million. So that's more than we wanted. We're going to bid more than we think we can get. But we want to make sure that we're providing a lot of ways to get back down to a number that's acceptable for the district. On top of all that as well, what you haven't seen is the stadium seating number, which was actually one of the highest priorities. That is a project that we plan on documenting and working on this summer. We're working with a civil engineer now, in fact, the one that you're working with at the elementary school, to put together a package for that. That will require some additional approvals from the municipality. That's why it's not rolled into this, because we didn't want to get delayed further by having to go through some approvals there. But we want to make sure we're budgeting for that cost. We think that about $250,000 is about what it'll cost to replace the bleachers there, kind of go up to that higher plaza level, and that design we had shared with you guys before. So timeline, we're rapidly getting to the bottom of our timeline sheet here. We're planning to go out to bid on the 18th of March and receive bids by the 15th of April. One thing to consider, because you're meeting in the beginning of the month and early, we know sometimes you have had additional meetings that needs to be advertised ahead of time. There may be a consideration to hold an additional board meeting on the 19th of April. If not, that would roll into the board meeting on May 3rd to essentially issue construction contracts at that night. We would meet with you, we would go over, here's the base bid, we'll kind of take that slide that we showed earlier and put the actual bids right next to that, say, here's what we thought, here's where we are, here's some other recommendations, and bring that to the board for their consideration. So that is that. We're on the home stretch. Any questions or comments? You taking stuff in the back, is that good?
Yeah, my quick question is, when you did the breakout spaces, how would they be utilized? For what purpose would students utilize them? I mean, just given
Mr. Freda, they were there.
Dynamic, how would they be utilized?
I'm sorry, did you guys say the COVID dynamic?
Well, with the COVID dynamic in school, how would you utilize those breakout spaces?
So obviously our goal with these are for much past the COVID time. The goal ultimately is when you look at modern educational spaces, these collaborative areas are where we see a lot of student work. I think one of the most frustrating pieces of this building is on a normal day, let's take COVID out of the equation for a minute. When I walk through the hallways, we constantly have students working in the hallways in groups. They're laying on the floor, they're sitting against lockers. It's not conducive to learning. It's what we did, I get it. But when we look at these areas, this really gives our students an opportunity for a teacher to take a class or two down. I think about, in all of our reading classes, we do lit circles, where maybe 6 students are reading the same book. And they can then be platooned all across these areas and hold those conversations. When they're working on something in math, and there's all of these whiteboard spaces available, they can be in their small pods really collaborating. There are things that we talk to the staff here, they see that they would use on a daily basis. I think they're going to probably be fighting each other to use them. We'll try to schedule it so that the fights break out in the hallways. But that is the goal. In the COVID world, yes, they will be used at a reduced scope, but there still is that possibility that student groups could be working in them with distancing, because they are fairly large spaces. I think as the drawings show, we would be blowing out some of the existing walls, so the rotundas wouldn't exist as they currently do. And, with again, the increased custodial staff, those areas would be cleaned as high touch points, but, so we would still be able to use them. But again, ultimately the goal is for that post-COVID world, to give our students a collaborative place to go. And I think, when we think that our students are going to be in this building for 5 years, we want this to be a place where they want to come and learn, and they want to come and collaborate. And I think all of these designs, and a huge kudos to this team, that really make this an exciting learning space.
I'll add 2 quick points to your points. In areas and in other schools that we've implemented these things, and again, you're seeing this all over the country, those types of spaces are very popular with students and teachers. They are very heavily used for all the reasons that you just said. During COVID, we've heard a lot of comments back, thank God we have these spaces. It finally gives us areas where we can break out. So we have some space to spread some kids out in some of those areas. So between these 2, as well as that LGI space, and certainly the library, I mean, that's really the academic heart of the school. The corridors, we were saying, are kind of all all the veins running through to get to those areas. But those big spaces right up to the middle on both floors, the LGI and or the STEM space from the LGI and that library are going to make very large academic splashes in the school. Okay, thank you guys very much. We'll see you in April sometime, hopefully with lots of good news.
Thank you, Mr. Collins.
Yes, thank you.
I don't want to.
I know, I heard there's money on the line. I'm nervous. Thank you, KCBA, for the presentation. I will turn it over to Andrew for the rest of the business report.
So bear with me as I play a business manager here. So items A through E are all the revenue and expenditure reports. Are there any questions on those? I can muddle my way through those, and if not, I will get you specific answers if not. Okay, I'll keep moving forward. Item G is curriculum technology. Mr. Volker has been working diligently to look at different resources for websites. And so, as you know, we've had some issues with our existing website from HIG. And so he is looking to transition us to a new platform. So, Mr. Volker, I'll turn it over to you for a quick explanation of that.
Sure. So I know there are a bunch of really big agenda items tonight. This one I feel as though gets dwarfed a little bit just due to some of the others that are on there. But this is actually a really great news item for the district. This actually dates back to the strategic planning process that we started back in 2018. We identified that communication is one of those areas we want to continue to improve, continue to get better. I think the date is 2015. Back in 2015, the number of people that started accessing websites on a computer started intersecting with those accessing websites on a mobile device, so typically your cell phone. So pretty much ever since then, the statistical norm is most people are actually accessing our website on their smartphones or tablets. Rarely are they on their computers. That being said, we have a website that is very much designed for a computer. One of the things that we're looking to do is find a company that would provide an app, like an actual application that would mirror our website. And ideally, we don't want to have 15 different tools. It would be great if we had a one-stop shop. You make a change here, it changes the website, it changes the app, and then it could also control communication out to social media platforms. And it could also do email and text message for us. We finally found that tool. And that tool is Aptigee. So what we're proposing on this board agenda item is a transition that would take place basically from now until this summer, where we would migrate our website to this new platform. Not only would it be more user-friendly for those that add content to the website, because the tool that we have right now relies on a product called WordPress, which isn't really that user-friendly for the end users. It does take some technical expertise. And by result, what we're seeing is stagnation with our website. We don't have a lot of new content added as frequently as we would like to. So we believe this tool, providing all of those resources in a more user-friendly way, is going to help us with our marketing efforts and also just help with our overall communication to our community. All right, thank you.
From Mr. Walker. Any questions on that? Under facilities and maintenance, there are quite a few items here. I'll go through these. We have a update for Ace Electric to replace a pole over at the high school that was knocked over. We did look into insurance, but so you go through the copay, the insurance, or not the copay, the deductible. It's easier if we just pay it out. It's less expensive, honestly. So we're asking for that approval. We're asking for approval of a one-year contract extension with HT Lions. They've been a great partner for us for the district-wide HVAC maintenance. Mr. Wetzel's been very satisfied with them. There is a one-year clause in their contract to extend the contract, which we're looking to take advantage of. It has a consistent escalator in there, but it also has some increases due to COVID because filter prices are really going up right now due to COVID. So that's some of the cost explanation there. Item 3 is a new Kubota tractor here for the middle school. That is budgeted. It came in a little bit under budget, but that would be a budgeted item and a purchase that we would be looking to make for this year yet. And then item 4 is additional cleaning equipment. The middle school and high school equipment, again, is already budgeted for. The elementary is not, but that is items that are needed for the additional space in the elementary school with the gymnasium and the new floorways and the new classrooms. And so we are looking to make some purchase for some additional equipment to help that cleaning process at the elementary school. Item 5 is for enhancements to the security system at the elementary school. As we haven't grown that building with the gym and the classroom spaces, we're looking to add cameras and door access. That $19,000 will be totally grant funded. And then similarly, we have radio maintenance, proposal to work with Radio Maintenance Incorporated for additional handheld radios. This is something, as we looked at grants, the building principals were looking to extend the ability for two-way radios, particularly in emergency situations, fire drills and other emergency situations we handle. And that is completely grant funded as well. And then finally, this one's a strategic move, but we're asking to approve the purchase of a district van out of 2020 this year's funds. It's not budgeted for, but we do feel that there is enough funds to be able to cover this $32,000 expense for a district van. And then what it does is it takes out of the budget for next year, knowing that we still have to make some reductions to get us down to that level of funded budget. That will help to reduce that cost. So we are going to pull that vehicle out of the budget for next year than purchase it now. We looked at doing that with the truck as well, but the availability is not there, but there is availability for the van. That's why we're recommending that move this evening, because we have to have that in possession by June 30th. And then finally, the last item is to approve a 3-year contract with Gorman Associates, which is our auditors. We've had that audited firm for quite a few years, and they are honestly a very, very good auditing firm. They don't just kind of write the blank check or just check us off. They go through a very thorough process, and I have been very satisfied with them. So my recommendation would be to move forward with continued services with Gorman. Any questions on those items under the building operations report?
Yeah, Andrew, on the Kubota tractor, we currently have one at the middle school and one at the high school, correct? They're used for dragging the fields. Is that the same Kubota?
We have a new Kubota at the high school. It's used primarily for field work and snow removal. Middle school, the only thing assigned here is a older John Deere tractor, lawn tractor, okay, with a plow on it and the skid loader's housed here.
Okay,
That's
so I thought we had gotten another one a while ago and had one.
There's an older John Deere loader that's housed normally at the elementary school for snow removal. We bring it here to help a little bit with field work, but it's housed primarily at that building.
Okay, all right, good enough, thanks.
Any other question on those items?
And item number 7, the van.
Yes.
So what you're saying is for next year, you have it budgeted. What we're going to do is pay for it this year and get it on our books by June 30th. Can you remind us how we plan to use that van? Is it for students, field trips? How is it used?
Yeah, it'll be for student athlete use as well as student field trips.
Okay, but we're not really doing student field trips this year?
That's correct. So the primary use is student athletes, and then secondary use is student field trips.
And for the student athletes, remind us again, this van is replacing one that's in really bad condition?
That's correct. So then we would get rid of that one,
sell it and kind of move our fleet down. Yeah.
Any other questions? Hearing none, Ms. Bruner, if you could do a roll call, please.
Yes. Mrs. Henry?
Yes.
Mrs. Hughes?
Yes.
Mr. Chouwaki?
Yes.
Mrs. Wallheiser? Yes. Mr. Beaver?
Yes.
Dr. Carter?
Yes.
Mr. Ryland?
Yes.
8 yeas, motion passes.
Thank you. Moving on to superintendent report. Can I get a motion in a second?
Second.
Mr. Tomasi and Mr. Beaver. All right, I'll turn it over to you. I'll turn it over to Mr. Volker.
Okay. Once again, with the sea of other really pressing things, this is another item that could easily be overlooked, but it is a very exciting thing for us. Just as some background, right now every student in 8th grade takes Latin. Can you go ahead and take the microphone?
No, we can hear you. I can.
Can you hear Mr. Volker?
Better for that.
Is this better? Too much?
Never hand me a microphone. So every student right now in 8th grade takes Latin. That's the way that we currently have it set up at the high school. We have Spanish and we have German. One of the biggest efforts that we're trying to do is make sure that we continue a nice smooth transition for our students as they go from middle school to high school. You've seen this in the Explore course that we created, which is our STEM course, K-8, and then at the high school, we're now building this computer science pathway. There are a plethora of examples I can give you like that, but we're looking to do the same with our world language offerings. So what we're looking to institute is an exploratory type course at the 8th grade level, where students would have 1 quarter of Spanish, 1 quarter of German, 1 quarter of Latin, and then something we're all very excited about. There's a new concept out there referred to as Genius Hour. That is not what we'd end up calling the course, but what it is it's a course that allows students to connect their passion to learning. So that correlates directly with our district's vision, with what we're doing educationally. So we're extremely excited about this possibility. We're currently in the process of working with some of our teachers on developing the curriculum for this, which we would be looking to present to the school board in June. And obviously there are some minor staffing implications that we'd look to address through the staffing budget workshop, which is March 29th. From a high level, are there any specific questions about the concept? Okay. Yeah, we're very excited about it. Thank you, Mr. Potter.
Mr. Volker, just to clarify, in the write-up, it also talks about the notion of launching a class offering in Latin language at the high school level, so that, again, that becomes a third option?
Correct. As we're looking to increase some of those transitions, and I think in the memo, I also talk about how it can be really beneficial to have middle school students already connected to some high school students. So when they go up to the high school in a new building, they already have some of those relationships established. Specifically to future studies, what we are investigating, and will continue to investigate before we're proposing anything officially, is about the concept of adding a Latin 1 course at the high school then. So that wouldn't be something we'd be looking to do next year, but the year after, pending our research and continued evaluation of this, that would be something that could be really excellent to have that opportunity for our students at the high school level.
So the next item on the agenda is to approve an agreement with the BCIU. BCIU is basically acting as the conduit. So they would used to offer driving courses for our students. They were finding it more difficult to be able to manage that. So they have partnered with John's Driving School and Auto Tags. So the BCIU has set up this consortium agreement for all the schools in Berks County to partner with this John's Driving. So what will happen is we'll still provide defensive driving in high school for the written portion of it. We did have an option to partner with them on the written portion as well, but our class, as we evaluated it, is actually a little bit more robust, and so we decided to keep with our course, but they will offer the driving portion of the, so you can get the discount. So they can do that after hours, or they can do it even during the school day. So if the student schedule allows, because of a study hall or something like that, they will come to the school and pick up the student and do that driving opportunity there. That's a pretty neat opportunity that we didn't have before. B, C, and D is the approval of a second reading of curriculum. This is actually the third time we're seeing this because we did two first-time approvals, and so we forgot to do it the second time. So this is your second approval of social studies and business. And finally, the last item is a good news item, and that's approve a scholarship offered by Keystone Villa at Kutztown. Keystone Villa is on the way out to Fleetwood, but they would like to offer a scholarship to our students at this school. That's a pretty neat opportunity. Any questions on the superintendent report?
Hearing none, Mr. Turner, can I get a roll call, please?
Yes.
Yes.
Mr. Thompson? Yes. Mrs. Walliser? Mr. Baker?
Yes.
Dr. Carter?
Yes.
Mrs. Eisenman? Yes. Mr. Rock?
Yes.
8 yeas, motion passes.
Thank you. Personnel report. We get a motion and a second.
Second.
Mr. Tomasi and Mr. Beaver, dynamic duo there.
There are only two items under personnel report. That is the approval of the spring season co-curricular appointments. And then the other item is to approve Ms. Jamie Miller, who is an art teacher, as the mentor for an LTS art teacher, Mr. Lundy. Any questions?
Hearing none, we get a roll call, please.
Mrs. Hughes?
Yes.
Mr. Tomasi? Yes. Mrs. Walliser? Mr. Beaver?
Yes.
Dr. Carter? Yes. Mrs. Eisenman? Yes. Mrs. Henry?
Yes.
Mr. Rock?
Yes.
8 yeas, motion passes.
All right, is there any additional comments from the public? The board?
I would just like to say thanks to Mr. Geist. The athletics over the winter have been phenomenal. The health and safety measures kept. It's just been outstanding. If anything has come out of COVID that is good, if you're a Brandywine sports fan, you got to see everything you wanted to see. Shout out to all the wrestlers doing well. Dylan Reiner is just simply amazing. Noah Frack with his 100th win. Boys, girls basketball, the whole 9 yards. I got to watch a lot of Brandywine sports, and it's been awesome.
We're planning on keeping that system at the high school, and we're actually looking to add one to the middle school as well in the future.
Good, good.
Great.
All right, before we go to adjournment, I need to make an announcement that we did have an executive session prior to the meeting in regards to personnel, and we will have a brief executive session after the meeting in regards to personnel, but there will be no action taken. With that being said, do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second. I think you're too slow, John.
You are right.
Guys, how much be over this?
You did a damn great.